What is up, everyone? What is up? Happy... Is it Monday? God damn it, it's Monday. Time is this fickly thing when you work from home. What's up, Hans? What's up, Don? How y'all doing? Man, it's been an interesting day. So on the first note, I did manage to hit 5K on YouTube today. So I've officially crossed that milestone. So hooray for that. Yeah, it's been a long and arduous journey. Thank you, Just Dev. My Instagram is almost at 5,000 as well, and that's the interesting part about that is I have been off Instagram and privated my account for 4 years. When I came back, I had like 1,300, 1,400 followers, so the fact that I'm already back to 5K, close to 5K in like a week and a half or so, give or take, pretty shocking. Yes, I am, unfortunately, back on Instagram. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I did put a new video up today about why Kali Linux is not a daily driver operating system. I already can see that from some of my analytics, there were some people that I upset. Oh well. Haters gonna hate. I will not be on Instagram, so someone else can mod over there. I don't think I'm going to go live on Instagram. I know I have the capability to do so, but I don't know if I'm going to go live on Instagram. That is something I may entertain down the road, but right now I'm pushing the limit of my capabilities on my upload right now until I get high split the symmetrical bandwidth. And before I even consider going live on Instagram, I want to get PeerTube in. So PeerTube is where I want to go live next, once I can get my bandwidth situation sorted out. What about Facebook? So many of the older generation are on Facebook. Here's the problem. Facebook don't pay. Like, it is so janky the way they do things. Like, even on Instagram, I'm already, like, sitting back, like, okay, I could do that. I could grow my audience, but the reach is not as great as people think that it is there. Lives do not do as well as a lot of people think they do, and I know some people are going to say, well, this person is on there and all that. Not only that, I don't have a personal Facebook account anymore. The one Facebook account that I do happen to have, which took me a while to freaking get Facebook's automated systems to be okay with, is literally there for Facebook Marketplace. That's it. That's it. It doesn't even have my real name on there. It is literally just an account for me to access Facebook Marketplace, look at deals on used hardware, and that's it. Your TikTok still says Gaming Linux Day, FYI. Why the hell does it say that? I don't know. TikTok's kind of weird. I didn't put anything on there. It's literally like gaming/cybersecurity. I haven't really changed that title in months. Did you know the sandwich exists because of a gambling addict? Okay, that's a really random fact. I got some Rust if you need. I even have some strong stuff called Linux. He be snorting that redox. But yes, thank you for the congratulations on 5K. Alright, I'm back watching the video about No Superman. You! Crank that hoe, watch me crank it, watch me roll. Superman, that hoeing. Okay, I just showed my age right there. Crank that soldier boy. Fancy big mug again. Yeah, I actually do like this mug. It's not bad. I like the whole idea of it. Like, you have like a ceramic little tea strainer, and the lid doubles as a little saucer. It's not a bad mug for like, what did I spend, like 20 bucks on it? Soulja Boy is on my sex playlist. It's dude. You know why that sounds popular, right? Student piracy. Oh yeah, we talked about that. There's a video, actually, I think I made a YouTube video literally talking about that. In part, where I talked about, I forgot the specific title it was like a year ago or so, but why why users have been driven more to return to piracy. And, of course I know it's popular due to that. I was in that generation. Goes to download Linkin Park. It was the running meme of, is it Britney or is it Soulja? Is it Nirvana or is it Soulja? Because you would literally go on LimeWire or Kazaa or Winamx and go and download a song, and then you'd play it, like thinking, okay, I'm going to jam out to Linkin Park and be like, you! If buying isn't owning, piracy isn't stealing. Yeah, I've heard that a while, and you know, I've actually been trying to play devil's advocate to find the logical rebuttal to that, and I still haven't come up with one. But yeah. You also have CISSP. Nice. That test was one of the most annoying things that I ever did. Like, I've done all the CompTIA A+ and all those ones, and the CISSP is still... what was that stealing comment? It is... Hold on. If buying isn't owning, piracy isn't stealing. That has been what a lot of us have more or less been believing, because, look, if we were in the day and age of still physically owning our games, still physically owning the videos, the music, and all of that stuff, one could make the argument, but how many of you all, besides me, have actually bought music in the past year? And by buy music, I don't mean, oh, I had a subscription to Spotify or Apple Music. I'm like, you bought the album for that artist. And I will accept the answer of, you've gone to secondhand stores and gotten vinyl or something like that. Even if it's not brand new. Yeah, it's definitely been a while. 3 Kendrick records. Okay, you're in the rare minority there. I'm sure Kash Patel has some pirated OnlyFans content. Yeah. He's got content of Vikings in some kind of kinky Valhalla situation. I don't know. Kendrick is the god. I mean, I like his music. I wouldn't say, like, I'm against his stuff or anything. It's just not something that generally comes up in my circles, but if his music is playing, I'm not hating. Put that out there, okay? I loved his halftime show. He's just not in my, playlists and everything. But my playlists, like, I still have a lot of the shit from when I was, like, a kid. Like, my playlists are still a bunch of, like, Linkin Park and Wu-Tang Clan, and, I mean, if you need to doubt my love of hip-hop, the Wu-Tang flag is right here! Because the Wu is for the children! And remember, presidents are temporary, but the Wu is forever. He's not just someone you look up on the regular. No, but he is one of those people, like, when he drops bars, he's got great bars. Don't not get me wrong. I crack up that, Drake actually effed with him and Sent that boy packing. Kind of surprised Drake is still in the same music genre. Because, I mean, when M did that shit, MGK quit hip-hop entirely. Could you theoretically walk through all sides of your flag room? What do you mean, like, walk through all sides? Like, that's a whole other room. Like, that's an actual, like, that was the recording booth that I built during COVID for my buddies to, you know, spit their bars and stuff like that. I did more of the audio engineering stuff. There was a song that, I had a few songs that I wrote, but there was a song that I always wanted to write the bars down to. I have it written, but I never got around to, like, recording it. I'm a rocket like a cop on top, non-stop. They never get the drop as always bob and weaves up into the sea. Get no reprieve for you and me. Digitally like Bruce Lee, fluid like water. Better not bother. By the time you see me, I'm 3 country away, so best not play or end your day. I wrote that when I had the few drinks in me. Something new. I'd have to look through my book. That's the only thing that comes to the top of my head. I haven't really, like, spit in a while. You had a chance to look at the Blue Hammer situation. I'm not familiar with that one. Did you see any potential issues with NT-Sync being put in kernel space? I haven't looked too much into that. I've heard the hubbub about NT-Sync in there. It depends on how they're doing it. So, I mean, the thing is, a lot of hardware drivers do have to go in kernel space. That's just how it is. So, I'll have to look more into that side of it. Homemade NAS versus pre-made. Which do you prefer and why? It depends. So, I have a Synology NAS, an RS422 Plus. Why do I like it? In terms of cost and getting it built out, and the fact that it could fit in a shallow 1U, it was relatively inexpensive. The discs were most of the cost, not the actual unit. I think the unit was like, it's been a while since I bought it, but I think it was like $500-600. It's a 1U rack mount with 4 bays. However, when I go to build my next one, I'm going to build that. I'm probably looking at TrueNAS. Partially for that reason of Synology, just, they kind of pissed me off with the whole hard drive requirement thing they did, where it's like, oh, you have to buy our branded discs. I know they backed off from it, but I'm still like, I don't like the fact that he even considered that. Yeah, so I'm looking at TrueNAS for my next thing. I'm not going to hate on Synology. Like, let me put it this way. If I'm deploying into a business, I'm probably grabbing a QNAP or Synology for the business. There's support and everything there. TrueNAS, I'm actually even looking at TrueNAS. They have their own OEM that they work through. They have a 12-bay system, so I could add discs as I go. That's probably what I would do, so I wouldn't have to get constrained by where I currently am. It's like, oh, ran out of space. Slap another 10 terabyte in there. It's getting its own directory. Dev, NT-Sync, Fedora surprisingly seems to be the first to add it. Huh. Interesting. You're 16 and you want to get into cybersecurity. How do you start? Well, you're very young. So before you get into a career where you become so pessimistic about the world, I'm joking, sort of. But, I would tell you that right now you're young enough where I would look more at getting into the fundamentals and tinkering. There's a lot of things you can do right now because I know you're 16, you don't have access to a lot of capital. Virtual machines are a great way for a lot of people to start if you have access to a basic computer. Doesn't have to be, absolute beast of a machine. Just as long as you have a decent amount of memory. You can then do virtual machines on there. So you can maybe look at buying a Raspberry Pi. Of course, right now, I know with the RAM crisis, they're getting crazy priced right now. All single board computers, so it's a horrible time. I understand that. But once prices start coming down, that's something you can do. You can maybe look at secondhand markets. like Facebook Marketplace, you can find some really inexpensive computers for like 30, 40, $50. You don't need anything crazy. But home lab, what I would try to wrap your head around first, if you're 16 years old, and I always tell everyone this, start with networking. That is the foundational, fundamental part of IT, cybersecurity, anything. Learn a lot of that first. Subnetting, your RFC 1918 spaces, how VLANs work, things like that. And just like give yourself little projects to build up to. And of course, join communities that will help you learn and educate. I have a great, little Discord and Matrix community. You're more than welcome to join. There are many other communities out there as well that can help you on your journey. Right now, like I said, you're 16 years old. You're young. Enjoy life. But if you want to tinker, I'm all for it. Virtual machines would probably be a great way. There's actually a PDF one of the members of my community shared that's about 600 pages with all sorts of cybersecurity projects that you can do for free using open source tools and all that. That can help you learn out a lot. So if you go into my Discord, in the general channel, once you get verified, there's a pinned post. It's like from February of last year or the year before. I still recommend that document. Yeah, Packet Tracer. I always forget about Packet Tracer. And there's also GNS3, I think it was. It's been a few years, so chat, correct me if I got the name wrong there. But those are great ways also to learn some networking concepts. But I will give you some advice there. Those tools, while they're fun and dandy, they may not completely translate to the real world on a lot of things, or at least a few things. But it can at least get you your beak wet a little bit. Your thoughts on people saying they want to be introverted in this field? You're gonna be kneecapping yourself so hard from advancement because it's not what you know, it's who you know. I'm telling you, most of the jobs and the growth that I've had in my career has been from the people that I know, not really what I know. And I've learned a lot more from the people I know, so it's like that, whole situation. I actually spoke about that a while ago on a few streams ago, where a lot of people have the fallacious idea that, oh, you're going to work in technology, you're never really going to have to deal with humans. No. Most of us are having to work in teams. You have to be a team player. You have to communicate. You have to learn all those soft skills. But yeah. Tube Ugreen NAS, yay or nay? I haven't tried Ugreen myself. I haven't heard anything negative about them. So I can't really say one way or the other. But yeah, at least a Tube, always a recommendation. Put that in a RAID 1, just so at least you have continuity if one disk fails. Remember, RAID is not a backup. So do not count it as part of your backup schema. So remember 3, 2, 1. 3 different backups on 2 different mediums, and one of them being off-site. I don't know if Ugreen has this capability, but Synology does, where you have the ability to back up things over S3, and there's a service called Wasabi that you can get for like $6 per terabyte per month. Set up an S3 backup for them. Backblaze, DigitalOcean S3, AWS S3, all of those, but Wasabi so far has been like the best bang for the buck. Thoughts on ThinkPad 210 AI? I am not familiar with that one, but I am directly connected to Lenovo. I should bug them to test some stuff out for AI. I'm trying to massage my connections that I happen to have made over the years, and apparently I know somebody at NVIDIA through somebody else. So, yeah. No, I'm not going for GPUs, per se. I'm looking at NVIDIA DGX Sparks. Bro, this song lived rent-free in my head the other day. What song? You're gonna have some nice NAS-to-NAS proprietary software. Yeah, Synology and stuff like that, that's not all that uncommon. There is a piece of software I use for managing a lot of my backups from my machines to other places using Blinkdisk, which is open source. And it was built off of Copia. They now have a CLI version that's compatible. So yeah, definitely recommend that, Blinkdisk. I am affiliated with them, but you don't have to use their hosted infrastructure. But if you do, use the link in my bio, so it helps the channel out. But the software itself is open source. It doesn't cost you anything. You do have to make an account, but you control all your data. You generate the keys on your machine. It works on your hardware. So I have it working on an S3 bucket I set up, and it goes to my NAS that I own in my network. Best Linux OS to game on. Also, how do you play games with anti-cheat on Linux like Valorant? So, the best Linux to game on is the one that you enjoy the most. I've had an entire YouTube video talking about this, where there's this fallacy that people think that there's a best Linux, when in reality, the answer is, what is the best Linux for me? I use Pop! OS. Some people like Fedora. Some people like Bazite. Some people who don't touch grass and don't shower often use Arch. They will forever be my punching bag. They're good sports about it. Now, as far as the idea around anti-cheat, so Linux does work with anti-cheat. The common misconception is it doesn't. It does. It has issues with kernel-level anti-cheat, and that's not a limitation of Linux. That's an issue of the developer. And they just have to enable it on their end. But they don't, because they have the fallacy that, oh, it helps stop cheaters and everything. It really doesn't. So the reality is, no, you can't play games that have kernel-level anti-cheat, but there have been games that historically had kernel-level anti-cheat that work on Linux, like the easy anti-cheat system on Halo Master Chief Collection. That actually does work on Linux. And I take the firm stance of, well, I'm just not going to play a game that has kernel-level anti-cheat, because no game that's just an entertainment value should have that deep-level access into my system. Even if I were gaming on Windows, I would not install a game with kernel-level anti-cheat. And a lot of people that will also come back with the argument of, oh, well, you know, I want to switch to Linux, but, you know, there's this one specific game that doesn't work on Linux that, you know, is keeping me from switching. My argument would be, look at the state of gaming right now and what Microsoft has done with all of this crap. Do you want to allow that shitification to continue on? A little bit of temporary pain for the greater good in the long term may be the better benefit, because Microsoft is talking about subscription plans that may have occasional ads in there. Microsoft has been killing studios. So, if a game that happens to have an unethical kernel-level anti-cheat is that important for you, I want you to think about what the state of gaming will look like in 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, if we allow these big game studios continue doing the things that they've been doing. Or you can come over to the dark side, where we've got open source, fresh baked cookies, red lightsabers, and moonshine. Who doesn't like moonshine? What does a junior cybersecurity actually do? Well, it depends what part of cybersecurity you're talking about. Because cybersecurity, there's so many different aspects to it. People always like to say, I want to get into cybersecurity. I'm like, what part of cybersecurity? Do you want to get in, like, platform and endpoint security? Do you want to do, like, DevSecOps? Do you want to do operations, you know, security operations center? the SOC? Do you want to get into GRC where there's policy and all that stuff? Do you want to get in identity and access management? There's a lot of various aspects when it comes to cybersecurity. So a junior can really be any one of those parts, but at a lower end of things, where instead of potentially planning and leading, they're getting the tasks handed to them to do. I like Cubes OS and take showers. Well, Cubes OS people, I mean, we actually go out and, touch grass and all that, and our systems don't break our lives nearly as much as Arch does. Hey, I show more than all Pop OS users. Or just get a MacBook. I don't know if I'm really a fan of MacBooks. They're still overpriced. And I use a MacBook, okay? This is my work Mac. It's not my personal Mac, but it's the MacBook that I use for work. So for the people that are like, Chief, you've never used a Mac and you don't know what it's like to work on a Mac. I'm like, I work on it every day and I really get frustrated in quite a few different ways with it. Are we never getting good RAM prices again, are we? It's a tough time right now, but as we talked about right now, so we discussed this a couple of streams ago before we get into the videos that I need to review and everything like that. Sam Altman, the head of OpenAI, the guy that I curse his mother for not swallowing and still allowing to come into this world in more ways than one. He placed basically what do you call it? He made an order that had no requirement whatsoever for obligation. That was the word I'm thinking of. That had no obligation for him to purchase. He merely said, we want to have, I think it was 40% of all the memory that you're going to produce, and we want to put an order in for it, but not have an obligation to purchase. That's why RAM went up, in addition to yet all the scalpers figuring out, this is going to happen. Maybe if I hoard all this right now, I can sell it later and then make a profit on it, like what they try to do with a lot of the GPU scalping and everything like that. In fact, there were a few people that were coming out like not too long ago. I was watching videos about where they said, with the recent dip in prices on RAM, which it is coming down a little bit. Like right now, I don't know if that's going to continue, but right now it came down. It's actually worrying some of the scalpers because some of them said they may go out of business completely if the prices keep going down because they pulled a greedy move, bought things, and it may come down lower in price than what they bought it at. So we could potentially see a lot of the scalpers offload memory into the markets, and then that increases supply, which then decreases price. The other thing that's going into it is OpenAI is backing out of data center deals, and a lot of the memory purchase orders and such that we were talking about. Even Nvidia a while ago said that they're not going to be giving them some $1 billion whatever deal. This was a few weeks ago. I don't remember the details about it, but so there is the potential that in the next few months to a year or so, things could even out. But that's also going to coincide with the reality check of the bubble pop that comes with AI. I'm not saying, a lot of people have the misconception of, when the AI bubble pops, AI is going to go away. That's not how it's going to work. What's going to happen is people are going to get that reality check of the limitations of AI, what it's capable of, and understand it's nothing more than just a tool to be used. In the same way we saw the similar hype with cryptocurrency. specifically around blockchain technologies. I've made some videos talking about this. You may have seen it float through Instagram and TikTok and all that. But basically, the blockchain bros were going around square peg and round hole trying to put blockchain into everything. The same thing they're doing with AI. They're trying to fit AI into everything. And a lot of times, the products they're marketing as AI are not really AI in the terms of even large language models. They are AI in name only, and they're really using algorithmic technology that isn't even anywhere near the AI buzzword we have. I really don't like the idea of we refer to what we currently have as AI, because that is a misconception. What we have are large language models that are essentially glorified autocomplete with extra features. Are they useful? Yes. I'm not going to argue against that. But people are overhyping this shit. Like, way too much. And a lot of the people that are overhyping it are the people that aren't even working in the technology. They are so far removed. I remember my last job. They were like, we want to do stuff with AI. I remember my architect and I were like, you want to do stuff with AI? Well, what do you want to do with it? Like, they're like, I don't know, maybe we could do an LLM. An LLM to do what? Do you want us to go through the manuals of all the hardware and stuff we have and do retrieval augmented generation as an additional database for it to reference? Or do you want to have your entire, like, LLM just trained on our information? Like, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to make an MCP to endpoint into, you know, our line of business software that we have custom made? Like, what, and like, these executives are just basically blank face. We just want AI. Like, I'm sorry, I can't help you if you can't tell me what the fuck you want. But yeah, remind me to ask you for your Kden Live settings when I set mine up. Yeah, I can send you my Kden Live editing profiles, because when I record my videos for YouTube, my little hack is I figured out if you record straight at 1080p, it'll do a double encode, and what you have an opportunity that when it goes back on that second pass for VP9, it turns into pixel soup. Well, if you render the video instead of at 1920 by 1080, and you do, what is it, 2048 by 1152, still 16 by 9 ratio, it effectively makes the video play on YouTube at 1080p, but you get the higher quality encode first pass. So that's how I do it. I generate my videos at 1152p. At least until I start upgrading things to start doing at least 1440 and maybe do 4K one day. What's up, Marco? How's it going, bud? Have we reviewed my image and review on stream? I just posted one picture, but can we analyze it for a minute? Oh yeah, we should get into that stuff. Have you played with OpenClaw? A very, very small amount. Not enough for me to really consider myself any kind of an authority on it, other than I know, what things have happened. Okay, let me see. What image did you put on? Because I know we still have, I had a few people request me watch over. Apparently Linus Tech Tips is in some drama situation about a jet or some shit. I don't know. We're gonna go over that. Where the hell is your image, Prisms? I'm scrolling up and I'm not seeing it. It's just one image, but I think we're getting there. All right. So for right now, we're going to do a quick jump ahead. Just because this is, there's a couple of timely stories. One is from Lawn.tv. Music labels lose a big piracy case in the Supreme Court. And then the Linus Tech Tips situation is bad from August the Duck. But let's... What the hell image is this? What the hell did you send me, Prisms? Is Linus going Mr. Beast style video? I don't know. Thank you, Ray Rays. SOC 2 versus high tech, two different things. High tech is, as I remember, it's been a while since I've done this, but high tech was the enhancement to HIPAA requirements that, so like HIPAA had a requirement around like policies, high tech set minimum standards, if I recall. And SOC 2 is an independent, independent certification that you get from an auditor. It's like your Ernst & Youngs and those kind of companies. Now, there is another thing called High Trust, which is a certification, as I recall, in the healthcare space that is pretty intense. Oh, we're talking about integrating AI into shit just because, with no purpose, just for the sake of integrating AI. Pretty much. All right. Thank you, Moy Moy. Thank you for the 5K celebration there. All right, so let's watch this video here. 1 second. So we'll start with the, we'll start with the piracy case that happened in the Supreme Court with Lawn.tv. He's a great creator. We've watched a lot of his videos. Normally we've been talking about, we've been watching his videos over ATSC with over-the-air radio, over-the-air TVs and stuff like that. So, yeah. All right, so this is final verdict. ISPs beat music labels. So we'll find out what this situation's about. Yeah.
Hey everybody, it's Lon Seidman. For many years, the motion picture industry and record labels wanted to hold ISPs accountable for the actions of their users, up to and including requiring ISPs to remove people from the internet should they be suspected of piracy. And you can think of all the different ways that could go wrong. And the other day, there was a very big...
That just shows you how out of touch a lot of music labels are. Well, you know, if they pirate enough, remove them from the internet. Great, so you want to remove their ability because they pirated a few Metallica songs to, get a frickin' job, do their school homework, you know, pay their taxes, or a bunch of other things that pretty much, if anything, require you to have the internet or make your life inconvenient as hell. I want you to think about all the things that you do on the internet every single day as part of your daily life. These people are so out of touch. Continue.
Big Supreme Court ruling where a $1 billion verdict against Cox Communications over piracy was thrown out on the grounds that because ISPs are not actively marketing themselves as piracy services, they can't be held accountable for what their users did. It's a very interesting case. A lot of people haven't been talking about it, but I do think it has implications for the future. So let's get to it. Now, this video is being brought to you by all of you. That includes everyone who watches and subscribes to this channel on a regular basis, along with those of you who contribute to the channel, either through my donor box page at lon.tv/support, through YouTube, through Patreon, or Floatplane, and of course, the super thanks. Anything you can do to help the channel is appreciated.
Yeah, but they listen to Enter Sandman without permission.
To stand up for your consumer rights and point out areas where we should be taking a stand. We may not always win, but we are making some noise, especially on the FCC DRM issue and a few other things that I've got cooking as well. So now let's get back to this week's topic. Now, this big Supreme Court verdict is the end of over a decade of litigation. So all of the
Damn, a decade!
When this lawsuit first came into being have really changed insofar as how the market operates.
This started when some of y'all were in diapers. Okay, maybe not that far back. Where was I a decade ago? Oh. Yep, that would be like my mid-20s. Yeah, those were the years that if I could go back in time, I'd punch old me.
Didn't have as many convenient streaming options back when the suit was filed. And of course, we also had DRM applied to a lot of online sales of music that limited how consumers could listen to things. And if you think
go, you were dodging ice knives. What the hell?
When it comes to music, a lot of it came down to the fact that people wanted more convenient digital options for consuming music, and the record labels were not offering that. There was no streaming. You were locked down on your song purchases, and unless you went and ripped your CDs, it was a very arduous process to get music into your device. So a lot of people just downloaded Napster, not aware perhaps that they were breaking the law in downloading music illegally. Now, the record industry's response...
So this is actually, an interesting thing he's touching on. Apple is a big reason why music piracy declined so hard, because prior to the Apple iPod coming around, we were on Kazaa, we were on LimeWire, or I was a big fan of WinMX, Windows Media Exchange. And we would pirate our music that way. That's also famously how Soulja Boy became so popular. We've talked about that before, where he purposely mislabeled his songs as like Linkin Park or Nirvana or anything. So you download it thinking you're getting Smells Like Teen Spirit, and all of a sudden you're getting You! Bearshare, forgot they were a thing too. But we were downloading a lot of music so that we could play our music, and aside from going to, back in the day, Virgin Megastore, or maybe Best Buy, and going down the aisles and getting the discs to rip the music on your own computer, that was basically how you did it. Then Apple came around, and there were MP3 players before the iPod, let's be clear here, but they were clunky, they were convoluted devices to be able to use, but then Apple came out with the iPod. And the iPod was revolutionary because suddenly you had iTunes. And not only did you have iTunes where you could rip your music and put it into your iPod, you also had the ability to go to the iTunes store and download music, and you could pay just for the tracks you wanted, not just the entire thing. Money now, what can eat? Getting money in the daytime, even count it when I sleep. Wake up to getting bread, bitch, I do this for the streets. ADHD.
Theradish Prince just resubbed for 5 months. Yeet.
Just yeet. Thank you, buddy. Thank you for your Prime sub there. I appreciate you. Happy hacking. We'll need to hang out sometime or get lunch or something. We'll figure it out. I know there's someone else that, he hit me up to possibly go out for lunch or something. But yeah. Anyway, as I was saying, yeah, we basically would download a lot of music, and we'd get our iPod, and iPod revolutionized things where people were willingly paying to download music because no longer did we have the inconvenience of, having to do that. And in order to beat piracy, the easiest thing you can do is to make the legal way more convenient. It's the same argument as I tell people at work. If you want to make sure your developers are doing the secure thing, make the secure thing the default and convenient thing in the first place. That's why we do CI/CD. Otherwise, developers will go like water. They'll figure out a way to, do whatever they want more conveniently, even if it's insecure. But if you lock them down in a certain way where it's now the secure thing is the convenient thing, they'll do it anyway. A similar argument can be made when it comes to piracy. That's why a lot of people are now returning to piracy, because there's too many streaming services. I think one of the biggest issues that NBC, Paramount, and all these different services had is they all thought we're going to make our own streaming service. That's an expensive proposition. And you're going to have unique IP, intellectual property, for being able to be attracted to each thing. But not everyone has a lot of money to throw around, and if you're spending as much money on all these subscription services to equal cable, what's the point? I really think a lot of these vendors should have actually looked at this and said, you know what? We'll keep our deals with Netflix and Amazon Prime. They have the infrastructure for all this in place. Let's just keep doing that. But instead, now we have this fractured system. Like, hell, you go on Netflix, you'll find, like, a few seasons of Brooklyn Nine-Nine, but you gotta go to Peacock, I think it is, to get the entire show. That's how it is. Soulja Boy was the first Rickroll before Rickrolling was even a thing. This is, I think, true, actually. Alright, continuing on.
To consumers who were seeking more flexible consumption options was not to provide those options in the marketplace, but rather just sue people who were using some of these software packages like Napster. In one case, the record industry sued a 12-year-old girl in New York.
What the hell?
And believe it or not, they did not withdraw the case. They extracted $2,000 from her family in exchange for the music that she was allegedly pirating. In an
$2,000 from a 12-year-old girl. That is even worse than the Karens that call the police on children with a lemonade stand. Are they see you next Tuesdays? Absolutely. But I would say this is worse.
Another case here, they singled out this poor woman, Jamie Thomas Rassett, and initially she was hit with a $222,000.
Holy shit!
Only 24 songs on a Napster-like service. That was an award of $9,250 per song. But it got worse here, as the EFF reports, because there were additional cases that they brought against this poor woman, and it ended up being $1.9 million. A judge reduced the verdict just because it was so crazy, and then the appeal.
This is what? I knew some of these stories were crazy.
Lost, and she was on the hook for $222,000.
Holy shit!
Declare bankruptcy, and I don't think the record industry ever collected on this. Now, around this time, the industry was freaking out because their sales of music started taking a nosedive. They were actually at an all-time high around 2000 for physical media sales. But as people started acquiring these digital devices, they wanted music on their devices, and there was no legal way to get it there. And you'll see that in the early 2000s, although they were offering digital music sales, because of the DRM encryption, those sales were not making up for the losses in physical media. And it's likely that many consumers were choosing Napster just so they could get their songs on their iPod.
It's the more convenient situation.
Steve Jobs wrote a famous letter called Thoughts on Music, where he asked the industry to remove DRM. They eventually did remove the DRM. You can see that music sales, digital sales, went up quite a bit. In fact, they're doing pretty well even today because a lot of people like to buy lossless music.
Now, here's the irony. Apple now DRMs their own music. Do you know how I know? Because when I use Apple Music on my old iPod, I couldn't just bring the music over because the iPod doesn't support DRM. So I would have to use another piece of software. Was it, I think, Ukisoft or something like that? I'd use that piece of software to go into the Apple account, download all my music from the playlist to put on my damn iPod. Okay? I had to rip software, rip music, to play it on my Apple device because it wouldn't work with Apple Music. Think about that. So Apple has now done a full 180, and they are now putting DRM on their music.
Digitally, and that lossless music
Apple also uses ALAC instead of FLAC. That's true. That too.
Doesn't have DRM attached. And you'll also see that streaming has become a major source of revenue, and now the record industry is making more money than it ever did because they finally listened to what their consumers were willing to pay for. And if you're a fan of physical media, you'll see a dramatic uptick there in physical media purchases. In fact, vinyl records alone right now account for $1 billion a year in U.S. sales.
Damn!
$1 billion just for vinyl. There's been a major resurgence. Now, when the industry decided that suing
That's fair, because, like, I got, like, what, maybe 100 or so vinyl records. I've gone digging and to find stuff I could scratch.
consumers was not a good look, they moved on to where the money is with the ISPs, and the record industry, along with the Motion Picture Association, put together something called the Copyright Alert System, and they partnered up with Comcast, Time Warner, and Verizon. You will notice that Cox was not on the list here. And what this system did is had these ISPs work in concert with the record labels so that when the labels identified somebody pirating music, the ISP would send a warning to them. And if you...
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
I hate this system.
got 6 strikes, you would be removed from your internet service. And this came into being on July 7th, 2011. And then the ISPs implemented it in 2013. But it was discontinued in 2017 due to the program not substantially decreasing piracy. But it's during this time where Cox refused to participate that the record industry said, hey, they're not participating, they're not responding to our notices in a timely fashion.
You can participate in this.
And what the hope was that the DMCA, the digital...
Yeah, this was the USA only thing.
...not shield Cox because ISPs are shielded from liability if they act upon notifications that they receive. And because Cox didn't respond to those notifications to the manner that the RIAA wanted, that, in their opinion, made them liable for the piracy that was happening on their networks. So off to court they went, and the BMG Rights Management Group, along with Roundhill Music, were the first to sue Cox back in 2014. 12 years ago is when all this started in court. And
damn,
the record industry won a $1 billion verdict, and that was decided by a federal jury, indicating, according to this article, that jurors were troubled by Cox.
What kind of drugs were you on? $1 billion.
Cox's failure to prevent repeated infringement by thousands of their customers. So if we fast forward to today, how did this get reversed? Well, if you dive into the decision that was issued by the Supreme Court, Justice Clarence Thomas, who authored the decision, acknowledged that Cox...
Oh, so this didn't just go to the appellate. This went up to the big ones. And this is in... What's interesting about this is that this is when we have... I'm not trying to get political here, but we have a more right-leaning Supreme Court that generally tends to favor big businesses like the music industry. That's actually kind of interesting.
Could not hide behind the DMCA.
Maybe there's some pieces I'm missing, but yeah.
They were not responding to all of the notices that were coming in from the record labels. But because that defense was off the table, you have to look at other aspects of federal law, namely those dealing with copyright. And those laws say that a provider of a service is liable for a user's infringement only if it intended for the provided service to be used for infringement. So just because you can infringe on a cable modem, it doesn't mean that that is its primary use case or its marketed use. So they have to be able to show that the other party induced the infringement or made the service in a way that was tailored for that infringement. Cox neither induced its users' infringement nor provided...
This is part of why Canada allows piracy downloading for personal use, and stripping your DVD for preservation is technically piracy and only goes after distributors. So here's the interesting thing. The DMCA also allows for that, not maybe as explicitly as what you said, but the DMCA allows you to have backups. So, as you all know, or many of you know, I had a bad flood in my basement a few years ago. I had to get the sewer pipes redone and everything. It destroyed a crap ton of my physical anime collection I had in media and movies and all that. So I had to re-download a lot of that stuff. Technically speaking, under DMCA, what I did was fine in terms of the media that I knew was destroyed. But there needs to be explicit protections around downloading, and I really think that, if anything, we should only go after the distributors in the same way as, like Portugal handles narcotics usage. It's decriminalized across the board for end-user consumption, but the actual sale of it is not really legal. That's where I think it should kind of be more along the lines of. Mine in our uni was flat. And our flat was flagged because there was 5 of us pirating to IL. Yeah, that'll happen. Sucks that Spectrum bought Cox, and in a few years, Charter will change its name to Cox Communications. Well, they're all a cock. And isn't it as long as you still own the damaged media, you're still safe, long as you don't throw them away? Something more or less like that, although I'm not keeping around, it was sewer backup. I'm not keeping that physical media for obvious reasons. Had to throw out a bunch of shit. I'm still working on rebuilding a lot of my collection. Eventually I'll get around to, getting all the anime discs I had. Like, there were very few things I was managed to salvage. Like, I had my DVDs of Erotica 7, all the things from that 70s show. There was a few other animes that I have, some Stargate DVDs. I gotta rebuild a lot of my stuff.
Tailored to that infringement, and accordingly, they're not liable for the infringement of Sony's copyrights. And that is significant now because it doesn't just apply to Cox, it applies to all of the other ISPs. They don't necessarily have to react every time they get a notice because they have an additional defense beyond the DMCA safe harbor. Now, I realize this has been a very wonky discussion, so what's the big deal? How does this impact you? Well, I know all of you are upstanding citizens of the law who would never pirate anything, but some...
No, we don't pirate at all around here. No one in this chat would ever pirate any content in there. Right? Right? Wink, wink, nudge, nudge, elbow, elbow, shoulder, shoulder.
Somebody you may know who has access to your network could be deciding to pirate on your particular internet connection.
Yeah, it was my random neighbor Timmy. They got onto my network and downloaded all that content. I wasn't the one downloading the entire, discography of Stargate SG-1. No, 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 no. I would never do that.
And in the past, if you had somebody over and they did a BitTorrent thing and Comcast...
Something on Xfinity said if they see anything else, they're going to turn me off. Yeah, that's unfortunately the thing that sucks about it.
As the account holder,
totally didn't spend 15 hours building a hidden from ISP piracy.
Suspend your account completely, and Comcast had to act even if they couldn't prove it was you, because if they didn't act, they would lose their safe harbor defense. Now they've got another defense to say, hey, we are not intentionally running a pirate network here. Therefore, we can't be held liable. So I think what we're going to see as a result of all this are more direct lawsuits against people who are pirating again. I don't think they're going to repeat the mistakes they made before, which is going after individual consumers. I do think there are...
Yeah, because that got them bad press. We still will never forgive Metallica for that.
The deal now as it perhaps was back in the days of Napster, where there was a noticeable reduction in music sales because people wanted an alternative. Now there are alternatives, and most consumers are not pirating.
That's still hot.
So you will probably see more of this. And if you look on Comcast's DMCA policy...
Oh, what's for dinner? This is goat chanfana. It's been cooked in a crock pot for like 7 hours with Portuguese or red wine, or did we put Spanish red wine? Either way.
They do promise to protect your privacy unless there's a valid court order requiring them to turn over records. And the DMCA is not going to protect you or them from
Number one usage is poor.
There's a really interesting discussion on Reddit from a guy who opened up an internet account for his parents, and his parents in turn had rented their home out to a couple of college students, a couple of rooms.
Oh no.
Students in those rooms allegedly were downloading some very expensive engineering software.
Oh no.
That engineering software saw the IP address on a BitTorrent, issued a subpoena, and now his information is getting turned over.
Was it AutoCAD? It was AutoCAD, wasn't it? Or was SolidWorks?
In this lawsuit. And this poor guy doesn't even live there. So this kind of stuff will still continue. But I think what we're going to see less of are these automated companies that are just pushing out DMCA notices haphazardly, and Comcast having to issue all of these crazy warnings to their customers. I think that practice is likely coming to an end. So it's good to see some sanity perhaps returning here, where you can't blame
Woohoo! Sanity is winning!
For revenue that you allegedly say you're missing and have, of course, those costs passed down to consumers. There's a little more sanity going on here. And as we've been fighting encryption on over-the-air broadcasting, I think the experience that the music industry had is something the broadcast industry should take note of, because remember, restricting users is what led to their revenue problems. When they removed the restrictions, made things more accessible, got rid of the DRM, allowed streaming services that arguably are pretty affordable for the average consumer, suddenly their revenues went through the roof.
Long story short, you let the free market be free, you make more money in the market. Seems sensible to me.
And are still going up to the point now that they've far exceeded revenues that they had at their peak in the early 2000s, all because they listened to what customers were looking for. And it's good to see some of these ridiculous lawsuits over piracy get thrown out and have companies focus on what customers actually want. That will do it for this one. Until next time, this is Lon Seidman. Thanks for watching.
So, you're asking, what's the best way to keep your internet private? So, the honest truth is, the best way to stay private on the internet is not be on the internet. Short of that, privacy is more about a mindset of anything. I mean, a lot of people say, oh, just use a VPN, you'll be fine. Not necessarily true. Because there's so much that goes into it. Like, look, a lot of people will be like, oh, I'm private when I'm on my VPN. But then you're logging into Facebook and Amazon and all those different services and you're giving your PII away. It doesn't really help you. It just changes your IP address. That doesn't increase your privacy. So if you're looking at basically that perspective, it's more about who you're giving your data out to than how you're accessing your data. That's the big argument with privacy. Now, there's layers of different things going on to it, like what VTuber Nero just said. I use a VPN to hide from the ISP, not services. And the only reason people are really using VPNs to hide from their ISPs is because of the aforementioned issue we just went into with the Supreme Court going into the whole piracy issue with ISPs, because for years, ISPs had to respond to DMCA complaints. And they would, basically how they work is a lot of people are torrenting on, using BitTorrent, like, microtorrent, which a lot of people call uTorrent. I use QBitTorrent. And there are legal ways to use BitTorrent, just to be clear. It's not used just for illicit reasons. We use it a lot of times in the Linux world to download ISOs. But anyway, the way that BitTorrent works and how they gather IP addresses is simply when you are connecting to a tracker, and you're downloading, through a torrent or a torrent file or a magnet link, you're connecting to all the other people out there. All right? So there's a list going on of, all these people are, talking. I think it's distributed hashing table, or I think that's what it is that works on. Sorry, it's been a while since I've, done a deep dive to understand this technology. Anyway, but everyone is connecting to each other and basically talking to each other to find out who's available to give me the file and who can I give the file to. So what a lot of DMCA the people that go and, file the claims against you, they find what IP addresses are there on, let's say you're downloading a Mariah Carey album, okay? They'll find all the IP addresses there, and then they will find out who's the owner of each of those IP addresses in terms of the ISP, hand that information over. The ISP then goes further down the track to figure out who was issued that IP at that specific time when they reported that their IP was seen downloading these things. And then that's how they make the claim. So using BitTorrent, the best way you can really hide yourself is by anonymizing your IP. So you can do that a couple of ways. The most common way is you can use a VPN. Another way, which is less common, you can Torify your BitTorrent traffic and have it go over BitTorrent. Go over Tor, the Onion router. Some people do that. Not a very large amount of people, but you can do it. If you want private internet, use I2P. Pretty much the Internet Invisibility Project is that, but I2P is a whole other thing because I2P, as last I recall, you can't access ClearNet from it. You can only access other I2P resources, but there is a way to layer I2P on top of Tor. I've done it before, so that way you can get the best of both worlds, so that your ClearNet connections can still go out over Tor, but then you have the luxury of accessing both Tor and I2P addresses from the same machine. A little bit much, but it is an option. Alright. Next video before we go back into the regular list we had. I use Tor to stream my Annie watch. So it's not that bad. Loads fast if you use the mega link. Yeah, Tor is not as slow as a lot of people think. So there was a certain site. It's orange and black. Ends in hub. You're familiar with this? They actually had a Tor link. You could actually watch that, the mattress actresses, shall we say, over Tor. Now, you might be like, why would they do that? Well, you got to think about this. If you are in an oppressed country where that kind of content is not allowed, how are you gonna, people are still gonna want to watch that stuff. I mean, it's like the same thing, like, oh, you're an underage boy, Timmy, you shouldn't be looking at that stuff. Still steals the nudie mags from under their dad's nightstand or, you know, bed or whatever. You get the point that I'm making there. So, the hub said they actually did have quite a bit of traffic tracking back to the Middle East. The way they figured out some of this, because Tor anonymizes a lot of it, is the language it would come in as. Because when you connect over a browser, it'll show you, like, the language and stuff like that. So a lot of it was Arabic. Or stuff like that. They would, of course, be using English to, you know, search the site. But if you go on that certain hub site, there are definitely videos titled in Arabic. Yeah, the onion link for the hub still works. Oh, that's good to know. Not that I've had to use it. I only used that link one time to be like, oh, does this work? Can you actually play a video? And yeah, you can actually watch videos over Tor without much issue. It's a lot more performant than it used to be. Facebook, I don't know if they still have it, they had a Tor link as well. And you could navigate Facebook completely fine. And again, you might be like, well, Chief, why would you want to access Facebook if, you know, you're trying to be anonymous on Tor? Well, if you're in an oppressed country where they're blocking a lot of this content, sometimes Tor is one of the only ways they can access that content outside of a VPN. But yeah. Did you see the Razer 1911 40th anniversary montage? I did not. Did the PH release their Tor stats? I don't know if they did or didn't. Making mega upload back in the day. Hence why orange and black servers are in Greece. Are they? I thought they were a Canadian company. I don't know. Alright, next video. So, this is from August the Duck. This was another request somebody had for me to look at in a timely manner that DM'd me. The Linus Tech Tips situation is bad. Apparently this has to do with something about he bought a private jet or anything, something like that. I don't know, I don't really watch Linus Tech Tips, but they wanted me to watch this. Is this another example of where he's kind of been selling it? I don't know. We'll watch. We'll see.
When I started to explore that one aircraft that I was like, this is shockingly affordable.
Ladies,
Hold up. What jet was he looking at?
Aircraft that I was like, this is shockingly affordable.
A Dassault? Shockingly affordable at $5.63 million. And that's not to mention, so I have a little bit of a background in the aviation space. That's just the purchase. That's not the maintenance. That's not the staffing costs or all of that stuff that goes into it. You're spending hundreds of thousands a year minimum to maintain and staff that. And most millionaires and stuff don't actually have their own staff for this. They hire out a company to do stuff like that. There's, you know, you may see some of these up do that kind of thing. But there's a few ones that are really well known out there.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have breaking news for you. This might be the first time this has ever happened. A popular influencer who once said that they were against something that they likely thought they would never have the opportunity to experience, something that it's the popular opinion to be against, has now completely changed their mind once they realize that they do in fact have the funds to experience that thing. Have we ever seen this? Ladies and gentlemen, finally, some good YouTuber drama. I feel like it's...
Is it the same with boats, high maintenance costs? Boats don't have nearly the same high maintenance costs as planes do, because you have to remember, planes are extremely regulated. So you're, like, let's talk about you have to fly, okay? You getting your license to, you know, captain your own boat, not as intense as becoming a pilot. Like, what is it? You need about 1,500 hours to be qualified to be a jet pilot. And becoming a jet pilot isn't just like, oh, I got my license, I'm going to be a jet pilot. No, you have to step up so many different ways. And then you have to get qualified just for that jet. There's a lot that goes into it. I was starting ground school when I was trying to become a drone operator. I have so many different things I want to do, okay? And you have to go through a lot of the same process to learn about a lot of this stuff. So, and the jet he's on... Okay, that's actually not a cheap jet, like he's saying. It is a used jet. I'm not familiar with what company has that, so it was probably a true private jet, like it was owned by somebody. But you can see over here, they have a little cabinet over here, all that. So in the smaller jets, like your, I think, what is it, the smaller, like your Lear jets, things like that, you may have to crouch down a little bit to get into these jets. I've been in a few private jets. Long story. And, you know, you may not actually have a person there that actually serves you. In some of these private jets, your captain is the person that actually loads your baggage, and once they're at cruising altitude, are the ones that'll mix your drinks and stuff. This, however, I think is just large enough that you're going to have a flight attendant as well. So you have to think about that staffing cost. Is that mandatory? No. It's one of those luxury things. The operating costs of a private jet is not cheap. I need to find my book that I had from a prior company I worked at. They broke down a lot of these. I think they talked about the Dassault. It was owned by a Saudi prince. Okay. Am I effing with TikTok? You're on sale? What? I don't know what you're talking about. Plans have to meet FAA just to take off. Yes. FAA. And then, if you are flying internationally, so he's in Canada. I want you to think about this. He's in Canada. He has to go by the compliance of Canada and the U.S. regulations, and anytime he goes back and forth, he has to do all the forms that, you know, you would have to do anyway when you're traveling, all that. You have to get your flight plans arranged, all that. It is not that straightforward when you're a private jet owner traveling internationally. And it's not like, oh, I'm just going to hop over to New York. You usually have to plan that at least a few days in advance, at least from my understanding. There are ways to expedite that and all that. International travel, going from, like, the U.S. to EU, it could be even longer. There's a lot that goes into that. Hence all the gold in the plane. Yeah, that actually makes sense. So it was a former Saudi plane. Yeah. So hold on. I'm curious. So that's the Dassault 900B, they said. Dassault 900B. Okay, so... Oh yeah, this is not a small jet. Typically 10 to 14 passengers, often 13. That depends on the configuration, because you can configure these jets in any way, shape, or form you want. So as you see, like, there's a track on there right at the bottom. You can pull those seats out. You can reconfigure it in any different way. So if you want the seats to orient in any different way, you can put a couch there, whatever. Hell, I knew of some jet owners that literally put stripper poles in their jets. Anyway, pre-owned price is 5.6 to 6.4 million. The cabin's 33 feet long, 6 foot 2 inches high, 7 foot 8 inches. And it goes Mach 0.84 with a nautical range of 3,450 miles. So, I don't know, is that, hold on. NYC to London, distance. I'm just curious. Okay, that is not even long enough. So, that is not long enough to go from New York City to London. He would probably have to still eat. That would be pushing it, damn. Because it's approximately 3,450 with takeoff, everything. So, that's a puddle jumper. It can do the Atlantic Linus stated. Okay, it can. But again, that depends on so many different things that go on. Anyway, but it's being 6'2" high. Like I was saying, Learjet, I think it was. Was it the 35A I was thinking of? Yeah, so the Learjet, like the 35A, is generally a smaller, more economical jet, as you would refer to it. These are used by, like, medevacs, things like that. That one has a cabin of 4.9 feet high, to give you an idea. His uncle is his pilot, and that, according to Linus, is from him, though grain of salt. Are you attempting to try to humiliate individuals? What are you going on about? We're talking about somebody buying a jet. And you want to talk about a more affordable, the Learjet is actually, you can get around $1 million or less. Although, is that affordable to most people? No, but it's more affordable than what this is. He's also going to resell the plane in a few years. I mean, that makes sense, because jets don't last as long as a lot of people think they do. So when you buy a jet, they last about, I think the service life is about 20 to 25 years. On average. And the maintenance costs for a jet go up over time. Because you have to remember, so have you all heard about the, you've heard about the Apple tax. You know, like, oh, it's Apple, so it's more expensive. Have you ever heard of the airplane tax? Every one of your parts on a plane has to be certified. That's why if you ever look up parts for a plane, little parts cost thousands of dollars. Like, it's insane. A lot of his old staff are also posting posts about him without saying his name about the plane. Interesting. Anyway. Continuing on. Distance across the Atlantic. Linus's rewording isn't always accurate. Well, that's nothing new.
It's been a while since anything juicy yet still fun to talk about has come across my desk. Seems like most of the things we've talked about involving YouTubers recently has not really so much so been drama, but instead just horrible or depressing shit. So, nice change of pace. Recently, Linus Tech Tips, one of the biggest tech YouTubers on the planet, has recently found himself in a bit of hot water because he bought a private jet. And a lot of his audience is not super happy. Now, if you've been keeping up with Linus and how the
Actually, there's the recline mechanism for $5,000. See what I mean? It's $5,000 for a recline mechanism just because of a chair in an airplane. Linus and LTT has changed a lot since he got his CEO. Sometimes I think he really did sell the company, but has to stay a few years so people don't leave. That makes sense. So, let me make this very clear. I'm not against private jets per se. Okay? There are actually cases for a private jet. Do I agree with a lot of them? No. But if we're talking about when you're certain professionals, like, yes, Taylor Swift gets a lot of flack for her flying and everything like that. I can totally understand where people are coming from. But can you tell me how a person that travels the way she does, that has the tours that she does, can travel in the patterns that she needs to do as expeditiously as she needs to do? That I'm not against. There are also security considerations around some VIPs. That is a valid concern. That is actually why certain government officials, not just in the USA, have to fly private. Some of them bend the rule when they say have to be clear. But I think we can think of the President of the United States. There's a valid reason for them to have their own jet. The same could be said with a lot of world leaders. Hands were wet and gave up on spell. It's cool. I know what you meant. But the point being, I'm not against private jets per se. I worked at a jet company in the past. I'll have a video talking more about that and why I left them in the near future. Anyway, there are actually some ecological things coming out in terms of jets. Like, there is actually a biofuel, I think that's what the proper term would be, for jet fuel. Although it's not very popular, it's a little bit more expensive. But there are some jet owners that actually do that, where they actually only put that biofuel in, and it's produced through algae or something like that. It's really cool, actually, when I learned about this stuff. And there's also people are looking at a VTOL for electric airplanes. I mean, it's still far ways off, to be honest here, but it's these concepts are pretty cool. But yeah, so continuing on.
Internet has sort of been viewing him recently. You might already understand why that might be, but if you don't, there's some extra context that you should know. I'll try and fill you in real quick. This video is mainly going to be focusing on Linus's video where he actually reveals the jet, because oh my god, it's just so uniquely bad, even if you don't know any of this shit, but you should still know it. So basically, there seems to be two main things that are fanning this flame, beyond the fact that most people can't really find you all that relatable anymore after you buy a private jet, and also a lot of people just have personal issues with private jet use. And those two things are, one, Linus is on the record himself saying that he doesn't really agree with private jet usage. Ooh. He said this about Taylor Swift.
Taylor gets a lot of shit for her private jet use.
Or jet travel, okay, yeah.
Yeah. And I think that there is, personally, I don't fly private. I don't even fly first class. So, I kind of look at private air travel and I'm like, yeah, it doesn't seem great. The sheer amount of fuel consumption. So I thoughts on private travel. I don't feel it's necessary for me in any kind of security way, and I'm not super keen on it. I don't think it's great for the world.
And two, there's a bit of controversy surrounding how his employees are paid, with the most famous example coming from a longtime former employee of Linus Tech Tips named Jake Tivy, who publicly left the company and then made a video explaining his decision, with one of the main reasons being his compensation, with him saying, and I quote, "You kind of start thinking while you're working on your boss's third house, if you're ever going to be able to buy a house."
Oh, jeez. That's not a good way to put it.
I understand why those two particular issues might make the fact that you just...
Good God, that plane is so gaudy. Look, I'm not against private jets, to be clear. Okay? Like I've said, it's not one of those, I would go out of my way to buy a private jet, but if given the opportunity, yeah, I'll totally, be up for that situation. But that's probably never gonna happen. But look how gaudy this is, gold and everything like that. The first thing I would do on that kind of jet is rip it out. It just, it's like a compensating color kind of thing. Anyway.
Bought a private jet look a little bit worse than it might otherwise. But again, like I mentioned earlier, just the video alone where they reveal this private jet, the way it's framed, the way it's handled, is just kind of bad. There are some real questionable moments, and I can see why it's kind of splitting up his audience. So we're going to take a look at this video, kind of form our own opinions, and go from there. Let's begin. Please subscribe.
So the April Fool's wasn't a joke? We actually bought a jet?
What started as a meme on WAN show when I discovered that a jet-propelled aircraft is not as expensive as I initially thought. I'm serious.
Okay.
Even Luke was shocked. So I started exploring various options.
Jets are actually a bit more affordable than a lot of people think they are. Now, to get a brand new jet financed, oh my God. I know the process that some of those financiers go in through. They literally need you to open up your entire net worth portfolio, and some of these companies won't even talk to you to sell you a new jet unless you at least have $30 to $50 million, depending on the jet you want. And there are some companies that'll sell you like a card. Like there's a few companies out there that basically you like pay a lease on a jet. The most famous one of that is a company called NetJets. You may have heard of them.
And my uncle's in aviation and has been for many years on the pilot side, mechanical side, and operations side.
Okay.
So when I started to explore that one aircraft that I was like, this is shockingly affordable.
Okay, so right off the bat, and really this is my main gripe with the video, I feel like Linus is being extremely disingenuous throughout this entire thing. Calling any form of private jet travel affordable is fucking laughable. Now look, I'm not gonna play stupid. I understand what he's probably trying to say here, which is, hey, it's not a $70 million Gulfstream, but saying it's shockingly affordable might be one of the most out-of-touch things I've ever heard a YouTuber say.
So
I wouldn't have used the word affordable if I were in his position. I would have used the word economical. But here's the thing. When you are a private jet owner, a lot of business owners that I've met that actually have a private jet, they literally have a situation where time is money. Where I have this business meeting, I gotta go to Tokyo, then I gotta go to Japan, then I gotta do this, then I gotta do that, then I gotta do this. Where, like Mark Cuban even talks about, he keeps his jet running because he sometimes has meetings that he's in for an hour, then he's back out and he's flying again. I don't think that's really the case for Linus. Based on just, most of the time, he's on site doing his thing. He doesn't seem to do the ultra amount of traveling, and when he does, it's like, what? You have Computex, you have CES. You also can't just fly when you need a flight slot. Because he's a Canadian, yeah, actually, you're right. Now, if you're in the US, domestic travel, a lot easier. You can be wheels up at some of these companies and say, hey, I want to fly here, and be a wheels up in like an hour or two. Sometimes even less, depending on the situation. Because all you have to do is get your flight plan, you know, basically there, and then transmit it, all that. There's a bit different. But I don't really see the argument from him where it's economical. Like, look, they're a distant cousin of mine. But they're a cousin of mine that was actually looking at buying a jet. They had the money for it. And then ultimately backed out and said, you know, I don't really see the benefit here for me because I don't really, you know, need to travel all that much. And when I do, I can afford first class. And I'm not in this crunch of, oh shit, I have to be here and I have to work around these weird times and everything like that.
because of the non-disclosure agreement that we signed.
Golden journalist part's probably made it a bargain. What do you think about Gen 2 on a daily user? I'm generally not a fan of it because there's just so much involved in it, and there's really not an advantage to Gen 2 these days.
In order to purchase it.
Okay.
Like, this whole world is very closed door.
Yeah.
I can't actually tell you.
Linus stated that everything considered with him and flying his whole family or 10 plus employees out. Well, the jet he has can seat at max 14. What the hell? I don't know why, but sometimes when I see Linus's face, I just want to run up on him and punch him GTA 5 style. Maybe the... Jeez! I mean, I don't care for the dude, but damn, no, that's not like that. It was cheaper and more comfortable than multiple first-class business tickets. Cheaper and more comfortable. Okay, you may have the argument on comfort, but here's the thing. Cheaper how? Think about the cost of your jet. Think about the hundreds of thousands of dollars that you're going to have to do in upkeep. At the minimum, tens of thousands per year. You would have to travel a crap ton in order for that to be economically viable. This is one of those purchases where it's like, I can see an argument if you were a person that was traveling regularly and doing business flights and all that. Like, look, there's a lot of businesses out there that have private jets. You've got banks and multi-million-dollar corporations that are doing all this kind of stuff, but I feel like that's more somebody trying to convince themselves that it was a better buy than looking at the holistic picture. Said his uncle got most of covered under warranty. Warranty doesn't cover that much on a plane. Trust me. Warranty does not cover all that much. And think about what fuel costs. You got your fuel costs, you've got your hangar costs, you've got your costs with not just the upkeep of it, the inspections and all this stuff into it. There's a lot of costs that go into a plane. Now, the reason why, when you look at your, commercial flight, they get to amortize that across multiple different people.
You how much I paid. But what I can tell you is that if you Google it, it's less than that. And the second thing that I can tell you is that with a little bit of girl math, $0. I would have been
See what I mean?
crazy not to buy it.
All right, so this is where...
Yeah, our company had private planes and sold them off like 10 years ago as it wasn't viable. And that is fair. Some companies do buy them, and I think this is more where Linus is trying to go at the angle of using it as a deduction that they can depreciate on their taxes. There are ways that people finagle that. I know from working in that industry. That is one of the ways that they sell jets.
Where we really get into the kind of bullshit I'm talking about. Again, trying to say that you are spending $0, that you're losing...
I think a preacher said the same thing. I'd be crazy not to buy. Are we talking about the guy that referred to people as demons in the tubes or something like that? That dude? I forget his name. The one with the really crazy eyes? Or are we talking about another? There's several preachers that own private jets. What am I talking about?
Money if you don't buy a private jet is unfucking believable. Also, the whole if you Google it, it's less than that thing sounds kind of silly to me. Oh, it's not the exact number you threw up on screen? Oh my goodness, it's almost like that's how buying any vehicle is. They're all kind of priced.
Yep, that guy, the creepy smile one. Hold on. Demons in Tubes, Preacher, Private Jet. I need to look this up. Is it... I want to say Kenneth Copeland. Kenneth Copeland, that's who it was. You talking about... Let me find a better picture that doesn't have a paywall. We talking about this dude? That dude? That one? That's the one that I think of synonymously with, the preacher that's like flying, the one that had said he needed to fly on a private jet. Okay, that's the one, Kenneth Copeland, okay.
differently. No, but like seriously, once he starts to explain what he means by it cost $0, it just gets real eye-rolly for me. Like, I don't think I've mentioned this yet, but the title of the video where they reveal the plane is "The Gamer Jet is Real and it cost $0." Like, whatever, dude.
The engines are all in a service program from the previous owner that entitles you to completely refurbish them to effectively 0 hours brand new once they reach end of life. All 3 of those were done right before we purchased it. It's effectively brand new from an engine standpoint.
That still doesn't cover a lot of the other parts in the plane. Okay, you have the engines. How about the hydraulics, the lifter, the ailerons, the electronics control system, the backup systems, the backup to the backup systems, your landing gear, what if a tire goes out, all these different pieces. The engine is just one part.
Each of those refurbishments is worth anywhere from $1.1 to $1.2 million.
Each? And there's 3 of them?
The jet was also in for a 12-year service. And because my uncle's a shrewd negotiator, he put together a purchase contract for us where it was guaranteed that once it came out of that 12-year service, it was at Dassault specification. That 12-year service effectively costs as much or more than the rest of our purchase price.
So what you're saying is you got the plane for free?
So when I'm done with it, with the condition that it's in, with some of the special features that it has, for example, it is one of the few 900Bs on Earth that has a medevac kit. When it's time to divest of this thing, I should be able to get back what I paid and maybe even the bulk of what I spent operating it.
Okay, so to me,
this is just some funny accounting math. Does it make sense in terms of a business? Yes, but it's still forgetting the whole idea of he still has to put that money up front. You still have the expenses on the plane down the road, hangar costs, maintenance, all these different things that go into it. Private jets are not cheap. Not just to buy, but to maintain. And if you think I'm kidding here, go talk to your small little hobbyist Cessna flyer, a single prop airplane. Ask them how much they have to spend on their propeller plane to be operated per year. Hold on. Actually, we can do this. Single prop Cessna maintenance cost. Okay, so a single-engine Cessna maintenance costs typically range from $3,000 to $6,000 annually for routine inspections, with an additional $15 to $50 plus per flight hour reserved for repairs and engine overhaul. A mandatory annual inspection alone can cost $2,000 to $5,000, while total ownership costs, including fuel and hangar, often hit $15,000 to $30,000 annually. That's a small, single-prop Cessna. Not a jet. A Cessna. All right? Now, if we look at a Dassault 900B, annual maintenance on that's roughly $160,000 to over $400,000, heavily dependent on flight hours. Total direct operating costs, including fuels, are roughly $4,600 to $4,900 per hour. Major events such as 2C inspections can cost over $1.5 million, significantly impacting annual budgets. So your annual maintenance budget can go from $164,124 at 200 hours to $400,000 plus with 400 hours. Engine overhaul reserve approximately $212,000 to $424,000 annually based on hours. Total operating cost per hour $4,888, including fuel, crew, and maintenance on average. Fixed costs, crew, hangar, insurance, about $793,933 per year. Yeah. Can you rent planes to fly from location to location? Oh yeah, absolutely. There's multiple ones like that. I think Amalfi is one of the companies that can do that. There's another company called Wheels Up that's done that. NetJets, as I recall, they had a card. You could buy a card. It cost you like $50,000, $100,000 for 50 or 100 hours on there. And depending on the jet that you got and the line and all that, you can do that. But it's very limited that they go those out based on the people that I know that have been in that field. But yeah, there are places you can charter a private jet. That's absolutely a thing. So most of the private jets are not necessarily owned directly. They may be owned through a company that you're buying part of a plane. So there's like, so you've all heard of the, what do you call it? Timeshares. You've heard of timeshares, right? You basically buy a piece of property and you're allowed to have access to that piece of property for a period of time. There are companies, and NetJets is again one of the most famous for doing this, and I think Amalfi does this and others too, where instead of one person buying a full jet, you have multiple people going in and like buying a quarter of a jet each. And they're all owners of that jet, and they all take part in those annual costs. And then if somebody drops out, they have to bring somebody in, all that, you know, there's that whole thing. But all four of those people, or however they split the jet, can then fly out. Well, it's a little bit different on the timeshares there with how this works, because usually these companies have more jets than they usually anticipate traffic because they're going to be flying in or out and things like that. If you don't believe me, look up the private jet aviation companies and follow the travel for major events like the Super Bowl, F1 races, things like that. And you can just see them all go in and out during those times. It's really interesting once you learn that private jet companies actually make up a large amount of overall air traffic. Amalfi is on TikTok. They had some funny videos recording their most ridiculous customers. Yeah, I've seen them.
This seems like an extremely optimistic claim, especially if you're familiar with what it costs to operate, maintain, insure, and store a private jet.
Yep.
Now, obviously, I'm not like an expert in shit like this, but basic intuition and also like from the research I could gather, this just seems like normal aircraft purchase procedure. From what I can tell, it is just normal to service your airplane in this kind of manner before you sell it, because if you don't, if you were selling a car that needed a major maintenance, you have to price that into the sales price. So I mean, like,
that is absolutely true. That is absolutely true.
He's the one who just bought the private jet. He probably knows a lot more about this than I do. But he could easily spend $1 million a year operating this jet. I don't really understand, like, where the idea is coming from that he's going to be able to make all of his money back. I don't think it'd be a stretch to say that he could make back what he bought the plane for, but to recoup a bulk of his operating costs, I don't see how that could be possible. Also, and maybe I'm just...
That's the thing. He's talking about recouping his, like, plane cost itself, but like we talked about, the maintenance costs, the hangar costs, the insurance costs, all of that stuff. I don't think you really factored that in unless they're looking, and this is what I believe. This is my opinion. So this may not be fact, but my opinion based on what I know about the industry is he's probably bought the jet under Linus Tech Tips in order to use the losses from it as a tax deduction. I don't know how Canadian law works around this, but I know in US law, this is absolutely a thing. I can afford to use Kit Piper, but not the hangar fees.
Projecting here a bit, but
I know that Spirit, RIP, rented their entire fleet, but I didn't know if smaller 4-person planes. Oh, you totally could. There are actually aviation clubs. So imagine you are a hobbyist plane operator. I eventually want to get my license to fly a plane. One of many things I want to do. But nothing fancy, maybe like a single prop Cessna or a double prop. Just one of those things to be like, hey, I'm going to go fly from this city to this city. Or maybe even be like, hey, I'm going to fly from where I'm at, and I'll fly to DEF CON on a little Cessna and do a couple of puddle jumps along the way. But be that as it may, there are aviation clubs that people all go in on a jet, well, not a jet, but a single prop airplane. They share the cost of the plane, all these different things. They basically check it out with each other to have that available, and you split the hangar costs and everything. I know a few people from my prior life that actually would do just that. But it is not cheap, even as an average person here in chat, to do that with a single prop plane solo, which is why a lot of people do that.
I've made some purchases that I probably shouldn't have made in hindsight, and if I'm being honest with myself, this is how I...
Not even Tom Giraldi, who owns several ski resorts, hotel chains, and restaurant chains, outright owns a plane. He just uses an aviation club. Yeah! In fact, it's famously known, if you want to talk about the downsides of him owning a jet personally, we can track him. I'm not saying that nefariously. I'm being honest. His transponder will give his location out. We can follow him through ADSB once we know the tail number. That is why Sergey Brin and Louis Arnault sold their jets many years ago. And they now lease their jets from companies. They've said this publicly many years ago. Louis Arnault is the head of LVMH. Sergey Brin, founder of Google. This is the same crap that, Elon Musk got upset about. Now, I know some people are going to say, well, there's ways that, you file the paperwork, all that, yada, 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 yada. Yes, there are ways to cover it a little bit, but you can only cover it up so much before you can infer whose jet it is. Even Elon Musk had to own several jets to kind of be like, is he on this jet or is he on that jet? You get what I'm saying? Would you recommend getting a cybersecurity degree in WGU? I am actually going through WGU bachelor's myself right now. Oh yeah, LTT Corp did a DMCA to LTT plane tracker website. I'm actually I think I'm actually mutuals with Jack Sweeney, I think was his name. His name's public. The guy that was behind the celeb jets and Elon jet tracker and all that. Should probably hit him up and see what his thoughts are on this. But you can totally find his information on FlightAware or something like that.
Always talked about them right after I made them, trying to convince myself and the people around me that it was the best purchase I could have ever made in my life. Do I know that's what Linus is doing? No, but to me, it sounds like something I've done before.
And I know that you were very opposed to the jet in the lead up to this.
I was very vocal against it.
But the way...
Oh, the LTT plane tracker was a different group? Okay. I haven't been up on that side of the drama. I just know that that guy was the guy that made the Elon jet tracker and a bunch of the other celebrity jet trackers. Okay.
That the math works, it's a little bit of cash flow tied up, but we're not actually spending any money, which is so cool.
Okay, so again, I would really like to see this so-called math to where you are owning a fucking private jet and taking your family to Cabo in it, but you're somehow not spending any money.
Get him on Financial Audit with Caleb Hammer. I want to see him explain this to Caleb Hammer, who I know has flown on a private jet himself, and he's not going to hate on him for that. But I think he's going to set him straight and basically say, dude, it's a jet. Jet costs money. You're not going to make your money back. You would make more money putting that up and tying it up in silver or gold at the minimum, or putting it in bonds for the treasury or something like that, than you would be getting your money back out of this jet. At best, you may get near value, but you're not going to make more or probably even close to when you break down the costs over multiple years.
money. Like, seriously, unless there's just something he's not telling us, which he did say there was an NDA, this just doesn't make any sense. Private jet travel...
He was on Financial Audit YouTube channel a year ago after the GN takedown. They also did MKBHD. Wait, he was on Financial Audit? Huh. I've watched Caleb for years. Didn't know. Must have missed that episode.
Is the most expensive form of travel on the planet.
It is.
Like using a fucking super yacht, I guess, but nobody uses those to actually travel like that. It just doesn't seem like this could be possible.
I assumed that jet fuel would be inordinately expensive. It turns out that it's actually really similar to kerosene.
Okay.
And doesn't really cost that much more than regular fuel.
How much?
Does it cost? Is it that expensive? Not compared to gasoline. But I think he's forgetting the fact of how fast that fuel is burned at a rate of compared to a car.
Does it store, though?
It's just the sheer volume of it that you go through.
Yeah, see?
With that said, I'm starting a family vlog. That'll be coming soon. And the first episode is going to be a trip to Cabo, where I treated mine and Yvonne's families. When we factor in that the fuel coming back from Mexico was half as much as we paid to go down.
Oh, whoa.
It actually cost less than buying like a first class ticket for everyone.
Okay, gonna go ahead and retract my statement earlier that him saying that private jet travel is shockingly affordable is the most tone-deaf thing I've ever heard a YouTuber say. This now holds the crown. Like, I'm sorry.
He's not wrong there. Because let's say, okay, that one flight costs you half the cost of flying down to Cabo from wherever he's at. How often are you going to do that? You'd have to figure out how many flights you would need to do regularly for that. Yeah, his son's getting tall. No hate to his son. It's just his kid. We don't hate on the kids. I remember when he was little, though, and he was in like some of the water cooling videos. But yeah, saying, hey, yeah, this was half the cost of my first class tickets for my entire family and another family. When a lot of, I wouldn't say just Americans, but Canadians too, can't even afford an okay vacation. Like, let me put it this perspective. I'm a senior cybersecurity engineer. I make decent money, especially considering geographically where I'm at. My trip to DEF CON in Vegas for 1 week, flying economy. Okay, technically I'm going to be taking their business class because I'm checking a couple of bags and all that. But point being made, my entire trip probably costs less than one of his first class tickets. For an entire week in Vegas, 2 conferences, food, trip, Uber, range money for, you know, when I go to the DC shoot, all of that. Canadians can't travel within Canada for less than what it takes to cost to fly to the UK. Really? Yeah. And that's another thing. I'm looking up from the perspective of an American. Most Americans don't get the privilege to even leave the United States for a vacation. What is it they said? Like the number of Americans that actually have a passport is like something like a 25% or maybe even a third of Americans. It's not that much. I'm in that privileged class. I lived overseas in Europe and the Middle East. I've been to Morocco, where my family came from. I've traveled across the USA. I understand my point of privilege. You have a passport ID, card, not book. I have both. Just because it makes it easier when you have to do certain things, and it's like you may as well get both. $700 for economy, British Columbia to... What's NL? Is that Newfoundland? I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with... Okay, so it is Newfoundland. Let me know if I said that wrong. I think that's how you say it. Compared to 450 British Columbia to Cuba. Holy crap, it's cheaper to fly to Cuba than it is to Newfoundland? I did not know that. The ID only works for land and water travel too, which sucks. Yes. I only keep the card because there's been times where especially with the whole ICE shit. It's good to just have a federal ID. But when I go to, do my job or, when you do the I-9, they have to get 2 forms of ID. That was good. When I do testing at testing centers, I have to bring 2 forms of ID. Newfoundland. Is that how you say it? Look, I am on American education. You'll have to forgive me. I are smart.
But what was the expected reaction here? Oh, Linus, you should have led with this. The fuel that it costs to take 2 entire families on your private jet to a different country costs less than it would to just put them in first class? Well, now that you put it that way, why don't we all just get one? Like, holy shit, dude. First of all, this means literally nothing, because fuel does not even account for like half of your operating cost of a plane somewhere. It's usually like 30 to 40%. And 2, first class tickets are expensive as fuck. I put in some random dates, and for 8 first class tickets, which I feel like...
Holy shit! Yeah, I was right. Look how much one round trip. This is from Seattle to LAX. I think that's Phoenix to LAX. I think PDX is Phoenix. Hold on. No, Portland. I think Phoenix is PHX. Anyway, so Portland to LAX, all right? That's not even that long of a trip. And you're doing 2 stops? Oh, wait, no. Sorry. I was looking at the stops there. So you're going from, what's the YVR? Okay, Richmond, British Columbia. SJD Airport. Los Cabos. Okay, so literally going to, Cabo. From there, $20,000 on...
Like is a...
Okay, departing flight for... This is for 8 adults. Did he say if that was...
Fuck. I put in some random dates, and for 8 first-class tickets, which I feel like is a safe, if not low, assumption to how many people would go. When you say you took 2 different families, from Vancouver to Cabo is 20 grand.
20 grand. So he's saying this was so cheap. 20 grand is not something the average person can actually afford in their trip. Like my DEF CON trip, that's probably going to set me back 3 to 4K entirely, with badges and everything considered, meals, all that stuff. Even buying t-shirts and everything. If I manage to luck out getting the badges, which I may be able to get this year through a friend of mine that runs a village, it'll still only save me a few $100. I think Linus math is starting to come out on top.
How many people would go. When you say you took 2 different families, from Vancouver to Cabo is 20 grand. I found a fuel calculator online, and while it's probably not perfect, it estimates that it would cost you about $14,000 to $16,000 in fuel to get from Vancouver to Cabo and
$14,000 to $16,000 in cost per hour, so it's roughly about the same.
back. Which, I mean, like, I guess if you just had to get to Cabo and your only other option was first class and you only had to pay for fuel, yeah, I guess if you ignore the fact that you had to buy a $5 million airplane for that to even be an option, sure, you're saving money, but that's not the actual story. Like I said, fuel only accounts for about 40% of your operating cost when flying an airplane, which if you're paying 15 grand in fuel, and that's 40% of your total cost, that means that his actual cost to get his plane to Vancouver, to Cabo, and back was really probably about $35,000 to $40,000. And that's just...
Ouch, if true.
It's very disingenuous to be like, oh, well, I mean, fuel is technically cheaper than the most expensive plane ticket you could buy, so we're saving money. No, you're not. You've got to pay the pilots, you've got to pay insurance, you've got to pay the countries that you're flying into, over, and out of to be in their airspace. You've got to account for the engine hours you're adding to the plane. He was real happy about the fact that somebody else paid that $1 million per engine for the overhaul. If one single engine overhaul cost $1 million, imagine how expensive the cost is to operate that engine per flight hours.
I've seen where a single bolt, just one bolt, has cost $50 on a plane. There was really the airline tax. Like, if you don't believe me, Dassault 900B bolts cost. I'm looking up on eBay, but hold on. I'm trying to see. Smallest brake key screws, part number A33989, approximately $450 for the lot. Okay? Specific screws, listed at around $15 for a small lot, new old stock. And you might think that's not a lot, but, let me show you what 450 bucks get you. That ain't a lot. Okay? Oh, and it gets more insane for things.
Spoiler alert, it's a lot. Like, look, personally, I don't really agree with it, but I can't make myself lose sleep over every single super rich guy who buys a private jet. If I did, I don't think I'd ever sleep again. So, I mean, like, if this guy really wants to buy a private jet, I'm not going to be picketing outside of his office, but what I...
It's fine, his uncle's fixing it. His uncle will also have to deal with the certifications on each of the parts and stuff like that. It's not like you can just go and buy the part. Each part has to be certified. It's insane what goes into planes. It really is. It's not as simple as people think it is.
Do think is pretty shitty is buying a private jet because you want one. Obviously, nobody gets in the fucking market for a private plane unless you just really want one. And then going onto your YouTube channel being like, oh, well, it actually didn't cost me $1. It's super cheap. It's super affordable. Like, just to be honest. Like, come on, you're buying fucking private planes. You've kind of lost, like, oh, I'm just one of you guys look. Just be honest. It's more respectable. It makes you look better. Trying to frame this in a way where you're like, look, if you only consider one expense, this is basically cheaper than taking my family on a nice vacation.
Let me put it this way. I'm not hating on Linus for buying a jet. If you want to buy a jet, buy a jet. I'm hating on him for the way he's justifying it. Look, he wants to buy a jet to look cooler and fly around and be more convenient. That's cool. Just say that. That's my issue with this is, yeah.
Pretty questionable. Okay.
I feel it's a good time to talk about this.
Whoa.
Another major maintenance cost center on aircraft is landing gear.
Yep.
Rough landings, total landings, and time all contribute to how often this stuff needs to be overhauled and checked. Well, guess what? As part of my girl math $0 plane, all three were completely redone months ago as part of a 12-year check. I'm talking the whole plane goes up on struts or on donor landing gear. They completely take apart the whole thing, new seals, new everything, new anti-skid, make sure everything's working perfectly, and they throw it back on. So, once again, when we go to divest of this asset, business term for flip this, someone is basically buying a turnkey, ready to go 900.
So again, like, Linus, you are the one who got the turnkey plane. You are the one who bought the plane with all the service that had just been done to it. Are the services that you'll have to do...
The only way that I remember a lot of this math working out is if you're also considering it a depreciating asset inside your portfolio, with the expectation that it is going to take a loss over time. But yeah.
When you sell this plane going to be as major as the ones that the previous owner had to do before you bought it? No, but again, it just kind of feels like he's being disingenuous when he's explaining how much this plane is going to cost him and how much he's going to be able to make back once he sells it. Dude is literally explaining how like every part of this plane had to be rebuilt before he bought it and is seemingly like, yeah, but that's not going to happen to me. And I mean, yeah, it's not going to because he's not going to put thousands of flight hours onto this plane before he sells it, but he will be flying it. So he will absolutely have to do major maintenance between now and the time he sells it and likely some stuff to actually get it sold. I mean, like, come on, dude. Do you really think that somebody did millions of dollars worth of maintenance out of the goodness of their own hearts? No, because nobody would have bought it if they didn't.
Exactly.
It seems to me like he's overstating like how much money he's made off the fact that the plane had a massive service before he bought it. I mean, it's just like anything mechanical. Every time you use the plane, you are just working towards that having to happen again. I don't know, maybe I'm just misunderstanding him, but to me, it sort of seems like he's overstating the value that he's received from this plane being serviced right before he bought it, and kind of understating the fact that it would have had to have been done anyways. Like, from the way I'm understanding this, he's kind of treating this service as like something he's going to be able to extract from the purchase price and like make back almost, when from the way I understand this kind of stuff, it's all priced in. Planes have to have this shit done. Regulations are completely different. It's not like a car where you can just ignore getting an oil change for 20,000 miles. You have to do these things for these planes to be legal to fly. This stuff is priced in, and I feel like he's treating it like it's not for his audience. Anyways.
How much worse is this than compared to the TYE fire truck? Hold on. What are you talking about, the TYE fire truck? I know more about planes. You talking about like somebody bought a fire truck? Ty was AC. Oh, just a fire truck. Just buying a fire truck. A fire truck, actually, let me put it this way. A fire truck, if I'm not mistaken, most of them use a diesel engine. No, if you buy a fire truck, look, you can actually do things sensibly with a fire truck. I'm going to be honest with you. You might think it's weird, but you can do a lot more capable things with a fire truck. Like, look at like school buses, for example. People buy those all the time and mod them and make them into campers and stuff like that. You can make an argument for a fire truck. It's still going to be a depreciating asset. You're not going to make your money out of it, but turn it into an on-the-go media center. Okay, I'm not hating on that. But a jet is one of those things of, you're not buying it because you're going to save money. You're buying it for convenience and you're going to save time. Private jets cost more, no matter what way you slice it. If you are in the business of, I need to make sure that I can go whenever I need due to business needs or my time is that valuable, get a jet. But you're not really going to save money on a jet unless you do some really interesting accounting. And he doesn't seem to be the type to be flying enough for it to be able to even get to that point. I know a few welders who bought a pickup fire truck using the boxes to hold welding tools. Yeah, you can totally do economical things with vehicles that have 4 or more wheels. Like fire trucks or Humvees or, school buses. Maybe you don't agree with all of them, but you can totally do that. But a jet is not one of those things that someone can buy for themselves and then make all these justifications. Look, if Linus had just come out and said, look, I wanted to buy a jet because it wasn't as expensive as I thought, I had the money, and I want the convenience and the luxury of it, and I think it's kind of cool. Props to you. You can afford it. Pat yourself on the back. I'm not going to hate anyone that does that. I'm not going to hate on anybody that, has that privilege in their life, because if given the opportunity, I would probably do the same thing. But I'm not going to bullshit people.
The rest of the video is just them touring the plane pretty much. Not a whole lot more to do with my main gripe, which again is me just thinking that he's sort of being disingenuous with his audience on purpose. And I don't know, I'm interested to see how this plays out in the long term. Like I mentioned earlier, it seems like this has his audience pretty much split. A lot of people feel very strongly about private jet usage, and I mean for good reason. It's literally like the worst thing you could do as an individual for the environment beyond like owning a super yacht. It's one of those things where if you're like regularly chartering a private jet, and especially especially if you just outright own one, you've kind of got to admit to yourself that you are prioritizing your lifestyle, your convenience, over the health of the planet, which, you know, is not super cool.
Fair argument.
At the same time, a lot of people just don't really give a shit. Again, for me personally, my main issue with this video is just the way this video is framed. To seriously try and sell to your audience with a straight face the idea that owning a private jet is not going to cost you anything is truly absurd. Like, genuinely, that's kind of crazy. It doesn't even seem fitting to call that mental gymnastics. It would be an understatement. Again, to me, this just seems like a guy who really wanted a private jet and now does not want to disclose to his audience the insanity that is the reality of the operating expenses. I mean,
that is kind of how I feel about it as well. I know this video had August the Duck's own opinions on it, but I have to say, as someone who has worked in the private aviation space, he's not off base here. I'll have a whole video talking about that kind of thing another day, but yeah. I'm not hating on Linus for owning a jet. Congratulations, you bought a jet, you're now at that point in your life you can do that. What I'm having an issue of is his justification to everyone else why he got the jet. Oh yeah, it was cheaper to go get a jet than fly 2 families out first class to Cabo. Like, you're already starting from a point of reference that most of us can't even achieve. I'm over here like, I have to plan properly to have a 1-week trip in Vegas. That's even business related, mind you. This isn't like completely just for my fun and enjoyment. Do I enjoy cybersecurity? Yes, but ultimately, this is career related. Whether we talk about even me just doing content around this stuff, or I'm going to learn stuff in my day-to-day job. But that's still an expense I have to make of like $3,000 to $4,000, and that is basically my splurge trip of the year. Okay? Maybe if I'm lucky later on in the year, I'll make my way out to Morocco to visit some of my family. But that's my point there.
come on, dude, just be honest. Once you own a private jet with gold-plated sinks, there's really no more hiding the fact that you're swimming.
What's up, Chanel? How's it going?
I understand why this video was made the way it was. Well, guys, what are your thoughts? Like I've kind of been saying, I don't really believe that Linus believes that this is a $0 private jet. Like, I can't make myself believe that a guy who's been able to build, like, a business empire truly believes that he's going to be able to own and operate a private jet for no real cost.
Yeah.
That is literally impossible. Otherwise, everybody would have a private fucking jet. So I just don't really understand why he feels the need to say this to his audience. It's just kind of weird. Like, it's 2026. Everybody knows that YouTubers of this size have unbelievable amounts of money. Why not just be upfront about it? I don't really...
You can ask questions.
You have to become out of touch with your audience. That's why I savor every moment I have with you guys. Who knows when it'll be gone. See ya.
Hey, Chanel, don't worry. You can ask questions here. I try to, accommodate everybody here. So, we were just watching different things. This was just one video that we went through. But, okay. So, that more or less summarized what I thought was going to be the situation. Could I watch Linus's own video? Yeah, but I feel like it would be me drilling into more of the specifics on how he's wrong about jet ownership costs. And this isn't me coming from a point of bias. This is me coming from a point of, dude, you want to have a jet, that's fine. If you can afford a jet, that's cool. Props to you. But just be honest that you're not really going to make money on this. It's not going to be a neutral cost. You are going to lose money on that. Nobody buys a mechanical vehicle with the expectation that they are even going to get the exact money out when they bought it. Not a car, not a helicopter, not a boat, not a truck, nothing. Vote to turn male to muckle. Awesome, I wanted to ask you the best way to use a Proton VPN and their email. In what way? I mean, when it comes to Proton VPN, the main thing comes down to just turning it on. Generally speaking, I don't use a VPN unless I am out of the country. If you notice, I have well, you can't see it on TikTok, but I have Proton VPN on this computer. I only use it to get around geo-blocks and occasionally when I download a torrent. But I mainly use a VPN when I'm traveling and I'm in public internet spaces. So, where the hell was I before? I'm trying to find where I was before so we can continue on with my content and everything. God, we have a lot of things to go through. And now we got that video, Okay, anyway, back to what I was saying. Proton VPN, just use so the email is pretty straightforward. You just use the email like email. I mean, it's email. With the understanding of once you, if you're on Proton email, it's not end-to-end encrypted unless you're emailing somebody that's also on Proton. And you may not always know that. Like, for example, I have my own personal email using a custom domain. You won't know it's Proton until I tell you. But then my business one is Office 365. Anyway, VPN, I generally tell people you don't need to be worrying about that on your own home internet unless you're intentionally trying to avoid your ISP surveillance for whatever reason, like, say, you're torrenting or you're trying to get around a geo-block or look like you're from somewhere else in the world, basically. But I only use a VPN when I'm traveling, at most, to encapsulate my traffic and tunnel it to at least that VPN endpoint, so that way my traffic can't be sniffed while I'm on a public network. Doesn't email use encryption now? I know Outlook to Gmail does. They use TLS encryption. So I go over this in my Proton video where I talk about the Alice and Bob thing. TLS encryption is the same thing as when you go to a website and it has that little locking icon. It's encrypted in transit, but not at rest. And it's not end-to-end encrypted. It's encrypted from gateway to gateway. So, like in your analogy, you're talking about Microsoft and Gmail. So your email, when it's being sent over SMTP, goes to Microsoft's gateway. They can see your email, technically there, for a bunch of legitimate reasons. And then it gets encrypted into TLS, and then goes to Google's gateway, where it's then decrypted, and Google now has access to everything that was in your email, metadata, all that stuff, for legitimate reasons, spam detection, phishing, reputation management, all these different things. And then routes it to your mailbox. But it's only encrypted from gateway to gateway, not end-to-end. In order to do true end-to-end encryption, you'd have to use something like PGP. But most people are not using PGP, because you would have to have their public key, because it's asymmetric cryptography, beforehand, and then encrypt it with your private key. Yeah, watch the YouTube video that I have talking about Proton Mail. There's a bunch of explanations in there about how email works. That should help explain a lot of that. Friends don't let friends run their own email server. Indeed, they do not. All right. I think we got time for one last video. This is from DW, Planet A. Can this magic fuel clean up the shipping industry? An ammonia engine? Huh. Not heard of this. It's 2 years ago.
This engine is a huge chance for the shipping industry to clean up its act. It runs on ammonia, and that means it can propel a ship without emitting any carbon, in theory.
Wait, what?
With renewable energy, ammonia's emissions are close to zero.
And the shipping industry really needs a silver bullet.
It's now responsible for 3% of global emissions, but this might grow to 10% because basically everyone is shipping.
Have a good night, Chanel.
But this engine has the potential to reduce those drastically.
Is this really the solution?
You just know how to make spoofed email for mass notifications and trolling at school. Yeah, those are easy to pick up on if you set up your email security properly. That's where DMARC, SPF, and DMARC and SPF help handle that. And then you can use DKIM on top of that. And now there's also BIMI, but that's a whole other thing.
Quick chemistry lesson before we get to the engine. Ammonia,
which even your body produces in your sweat or your pee, consists of 1 nitrogen atom and 3 hydrogen atoms. What's not in there? Carbon. That's why there aren't any carbon emissions. In the world, it looks a bit different, but more on that later.
Another advantage of the missing carbon atom is that it makes ammonia cheaper compared to other fuel options like methanol.
Oh, really?
For methanol to be carbon neutral, you must capture the carbon it emits when burned. And that's quite expensive to do. With ammonia, there's no need.
Never thought about it.
So projections are that ammonia will dominate the ship fuel market with a share of 35 to 60% in 2050.
That's a ways off.
But a few pieces of the puzzle are still missing.
Of course.
The big one, the engine.
Well,
that is indeed a big one.
As of now, ammonia engines for large container ships have yet to go into commercial production.
I'm really curious how this is actually going to save any fuel.
As you can see, there are 4 cylinders. Most people don't realize it's actually a cylinder because they are so enormous.
God, the pistons in that must be massive.
This is the research
of
engine designer MAN. Some might know them for their trucks, but they also develop really big engines for really, really big ships. They were the only company that would let us film an ammonia engine in development.
Really?
6,700 horsepower, and when it's finished,
good God,
as big as a family home.
Who wants to put that in their car?
This is the guy showing me around today, Rasmus Holm Bidstrup.
How is this engine different from a normal diesel engine?
First and foremost, we need to apply an additional set of components on the engine. And this is essentially the components you see right here. So, first of all, you have the yellow piping right here.
Okay.
These pipes deliver the ammonia into the cylinder to combust, but they are not the only vital parts.
So one of the most essential components...
So that's basically your fuel line, okay.
...is actually the ammonia fuel injectors. Ammonia doesn't have a very, very high calorific value. So what is calorific value? It is essentially the energy it can contain within a certain volume. So for ammonia, we need to have very, very big fuel injectors compared to existing fuel oil engine injectors.
I'd like to see a side-by-side comparison to see how large they're talking. They look significantly sized compared to diesel ones I've seen, but yeah.
Once ammonia enters the cylinder and is supposed to ignite, that's when it becomes really challenging. Chemically speaking, ammonia is difficult to set alight, as we can see here inside.
Does it require a lot of compression?
It only self-ignites at around 650 degrees Celsius.
Damn, that's high.
12 times slower than fossil marine fuels. That's because the chemical bonds within the ammonia molecule are relatively strong.
And therefore we simply need to inject a small amount of pilot oil to initiate and stabilize the combustion.
You basically help the ammonia to ignite with what's called a pilot fuel, so a fuel that ignites easier than ammonia. Diesel, for example.
Oh, really?
This is so huge. I mean...
So it still needs regular oil to initiate the initial spark, of my understanding? Or the initial... Damn!
This combustion also produces water and nitrogen. These don't burn and slow down the combustion, and
It's just stubborn diesel, that's the way to put it.
And they are a big issue. Their names almost sound the same. Nitrogen oxides and nitrous oxide. Nitrous oxide is 273 times more potent at heating the planet than CO2.
It's also very fun. In cars. I don't know what you were thinking about. I was talking about cars.
Nitrogen oxides, on the other side, are poisonous.
MAN has been testing their engine since July 2023, and with over 30 sensors, they have been measuring all kinds of emissions coming out of it. The good news, they are between 85 and 90% lower than those of a heavy fuel oil engine.
Oh, really?
The major challenge still is getting rid of both nitrous oxide and nitrogen oxides emissions.
So one big concern are also nitrous oxide emissions with these engines. How do you get rid of them?
Well, we have a lot of opportunities when it comes to controlling the combustion pressure, the combustion timings, and thereby also the temperatures. And those handles alone allow us to avoid the formation of nitrous oxide.
As a rule of thumb, higher combustion temperatures lead to less nitrous oxide emissions. But how much oxygen you put in also plays a role. Tweaking these parameters can reduce the emissions. So nitrous oxide emissions can be dealt with, according to MAN, but there are still the poisonous nitrogen oxides emissions.
This is the catalyst.
And those require a catalytic reduction reactor. Similar to a car, the engine's exhaust
makes sense
through honeycomb-like filters. In cars, ammonia needs to be added as it's essential for the process to work. But in an ammonia engine,
it's already there.
Some ammonia leftovers in the exhaust gas. Nitrogen oxides and ammonia enter, travel through the layers, and out comes nitrogen, water vapor.
How expensive is that catalytic converter?
Compliant with emission regulations.
Because they have like very precious metals in there, if I remember.
The engine is running at full power, but when it's not, the temperature in the engine decreases. Depending on how your engine is set up, this can lead to more nitrogen oxides emissions, which a reactor would need to deal with. At the same time, the reactor's effectiveness decreases due to the lower temperatures.
Catch-22.
It is an ongoing R&D project, and we will scale it up from 1 cylinder to 4 cylinders, and during that process, we will gain a lot of valid
I stole the cat of my car before someone else could.
details, such as how the load.
So at my last job, the first week somebody worked there, they had one of those old Priuses that were, famous for having really expensive catalytic converters. Somebody stole his catalytic converter, and he was like only on like day 2 or 3 working there. Great way to start your new job, huh?
Depends when it comes to the emissions, etc.
So right now you don't really know when such an engine would run at a lower load what the emissions are going to be.
That is correct.
But you don't really release what your current findings are on the level of emissions.
This is an ongoing R&D process, and once we scale it up, once we get clarity and transparency, of course, those details will be communicated to the market. You're being a critical journalist now.
Like we are not marketing people. And these kind of emissions have been underestimated before. For example, in the case of methane for ships that run on LNG engines, a gas that is 28 times more potent at heating the planet compared to CO2.
Damn.
In 2015, the wording was,
methane slip has now been practically eliminated in some engine concepts and minimized in others. And the DNVGL study assumed the methane slip for 4-stroke engines at 1.5% of the fuel. Today we know it's more like 6 to 8%.
Oh, damn.
Scientists who literally flew over LNG ships with a helicopter and measured those emissions. Of course, this cancels out some of the assumed climate benefits of those ships.
why would you say that the public should believe, okay, these engines are fine now?
Well, it's a fair point. So when it comes to ammonia engines in the future, of course, we will have to provide clarity and transparency in the industry, and thereby also committing to certain guaranteed levels of greenhouse gas emissions. I mean, if we replace CO2 emissions with certain levels of N2O emissions, we will not do anything good for the environment. More importantly, we will not have a commercial relevant product.
MAN says they currently plan to deliver the first commercial design of the engine in 2024. The first ship fitted with one is due to set sail in 2026.
For that to happen, even more things need to fall.
This video did come out 2 years ago. Let me see this. Ammonia engine ship. Do they have one? No, we just have Wärtsilä talking about there's a solution for it. Ah, here we are. Exmar launches its first ammonia-fueled vessel. So, August 18th, 2025. Launched by Hyundai Mipo in Ulsan. Is the first of 4 46,000 meters cubed, mid-sized gas carrier vessels being constructed in South Korea for Exmar, with formal delivery on track for 2026. Back in June, WinGD dual-fuel ammonia engine was installed on board the vessel after steel cutting began in January. Billed as the world's first ocean-going ammonia-fueled vessel. A number of ammonia-powered tugboats are already operational. The 190-meter-long LPG ammonia carrier can achieve a 90% GHG emission reduction, well to wake under ammonia fuel propulsion. Steel cutting for the next... Okay. Alright. So there is one already out on the sea. That's interesting.
Fall into place. For example,
does the engine need pure ammonia, or could the crew power the engine in an emergency? You know, that was my exact thought. Like, if we run out of power on the sea, can the captain just yell, "Everybody, go pee in the fuel tank! We're low on fuel!"
ships need to be redesigned because ammonia has a lower energy density than your regular marine diesel. So the tanks need to be bigger to pack the same amounts of energy. That and additional safety measures because ammonia is extremely toxic.
Oh yeah.
If you're exposed to it for too long, you can die. So you need
extra service tanks, systems to capture and recirculate the ammonia, plus good ventilation. And of course, these extra layers of security cost money and take up...
Not to mention emergency venting. Because, like, okay, you're in a room of gasoline or diesel. Yeah, it's going to smell me. It's not good for you to be around too long, but it's tolerable, comparatively.
And because of ammonia's smaller energy density, it would need a lot more storage space than fossil marine oil. But how much exactly?
We have done a study on a 15,000 TEU container vessel, a rather large container vessel that goes typically between Singapore and Europe.
This is Klaus Graugart, who researches how to reduce shipping emissions at an industry think tank.
I wouldn't even hesitate. You'd probably see me drinking water while pissing in the tank.
Oil, it would maybe be about 8,000 cubic meters worth of fuel oil.
Okay.
But in equivalence of ammonia, you would need about 20,000 cubic
Woo!
meters. So the space that...
Let me translate that for our metrically challenged audience over here. 20,000, what do you say, liters to gallons? That's 5,283.441 U.S. liquid gallons, compared to 2,113. So you need 2.5 times the amount of fuel capacity.
That tank, if it was a one-to-one comparison of the calorific value you want to carry on board, of course has a huge impact. And you would risk taking out several hundred bays of container carrying capacity. But if you build it in smartly from...
Nero, I know how the people think. U.S. gallons, of course, I got you.
Very smartly integrated and have a relatively limited impact.
According to their calculations, up to 1,100 fewer containers if you want the same range.
Oh.
Ammonia comes with a higher overall price tag compared to fossil fuels. Studies reviewed by the European Maritime Safety Agency assume using ammonia is about 3 to 3.5 times more expensive.
Economically, that's not going to make sense.
Renewable shipping fuels like methanol, ammonia is still calculated to be cheaper.
How?
And the price of the green ammonia from this tank heavily depends on where you generate the renewable electricity used to produce it. And that's where another challenge starts.
There is no green ammonia production at scale today. Most of the ammonia produced to date is grey ammonia made from fossil fuels according to the International Energy Agency.
Oi.
While burning it is clean, lots of carbon gets released before that. Total emissions are even higher than those of conventional.
This is like the whole electric car problem all over again. Hey, I got a clean electric car, but you're in a city that's 70% powered by coal. Are you really helping the environment out in the grand scheme of things? Methanol's a bitch to deal with. Oh yeah, methanol's a bitch to deal with. That was one of the worst things when you used to have to make moonshine. If you're not familiar, you know the first bits that you see moonshiners throw out when it still pops? It's methanol. So what we used to do is when I was shining back in college, we used to take methanol, throw that in a go-kart or a lawnmower. Cheap fuel.
marine fuels. For the production of green ammonia, you use renewable electricity to split water into hydrogen and oxygen using a process called electrolysis. In a separate process, you isolate nitrogen from the air. Then, very simply speaking, you put nitrogen and hydrogen together, heat them up, put them through an iron catalyst in a process called Haber-Bosch, and at the end of this process, you get NH3, so ammonia.
This process uses a lot of energy, and for the ammonia to be sustainable, you need a lot of renewable energy. So you do it in places where there is a lot of sun, for example.
Countries like Spain, Chile...
Hey, I got a car powered by pee.
Egypt, for example.
I got a car powered by pee. It really works out great when I'm drunk because I can just pee into my tank. That is a good question, though. Let's say you do get an ammonia-powered car where you do have to pee into your tank. If an officer stops you, is it indecent exposure if you're fooling your own tank? These are the thoughts that I have in my mind.
Many of these countries have limited renewable energy capacity installed today, and this export of green ammonia could compete with decarbonizing the local grid.
If the global shipping demand stays as it is now, and if we don't have significant energy efficiency improvements between now and 2050, global shipping will require about 600 million tons of ammonia to fully decarbonize.
Damn!
This is Fake Abazov, the Sustainable Maritime Transport Lead for the think tank Transport and
Might have to use a shiwi to cover the bits. I forgot about that shit!
Demand could increase by 50% between now and then, and that would mean that we'd need to have up to 900 million tons of green ammonia, assuming that green ammonia is the only fuel the shipping industry eventually relies on.
Just to give you an idea of how big of a leap forward is needed, remember the electrolysis? You need massive electrolyzers for this at an industry scale. Currently, the global capacity...
Excellent Chef sent a super chat. Would you consider nuclear to be clean? Yes. Nuclear is relatively clean in comparison to, say, fossil fuels and coal that we're using. Nuclear energy, while a lot of people focus on the toxic waste and things like that, if we look at the overall waste of nuclear energy, for example, I think it was like there's only like a few shipping container sizes. Nuclear waste amount per plant. A typical large commercial nuclear reactor produces about 25 to 30 metric tons of spent nuclear fuel per year. The U.S. nuclear as a whole, okay, so sounds like a lot in weight, but we have to remember these are very dense things. But here's the thing. The USA is one of the few countries that actually completely, classifies that waste as spent and just wasted. France reprocesses their nuclear fuel. And if I remember, their recapture rate is something like 90%? It's a lot that they end up reducing it by. In order for us to actually have a clean energy system, you're going to have to rely on a mix of nuclear fission energy. I'm more of a proponent of thorium reactors, but those are still relatively experimental. I'd like to see more thorium stuff, but we're still, well, not experimental, but they're still not commercially viable at the levels we would want yet. We would want to rely on a mix of geothermal, solar, wind, hydro, and yeah, overall, I'd say it's relatively clean, especially when we consider the damage that coal does. So if we look at a nuclear waste as 25 to 30 metric tons of spent nuclear fuel, high-level waste per year, let me look this up. I'm looking up how much coal would be done. Okay, when comparing waste from a typical 1,000 megawatt power plant, coal generates a significantly higher volume of physical waste and surprisingly releases more radioactivity into the surrounding environment than a nuclear plant. Wow. So if we look at, in terms of solid waste, a nuclear power plant produces 30 metric tons per year. Then you have 300,000 metric tons in a coal plant produced per year. But the gaseous waste, you know, the smoke that you see, is near zero with nuclear versus about 6 million tons or more of CO2. So you have 10 to 100 times more released. Thorium isn't viable. It's viable. I meant more in a commercial capacity to the way that we would like it to be seen. I misspoke there. Look, I'm a big proponent of thorium, okay?
Chess Set 5 is now chilling in the lab.
Thank you for the follow there. Look, I've been on videos before where I've said I love thorium. I think it needs to, it's one of the ones I've wanted to see pushed for a while. But in terms of commercial viability at scale, we're still not there yet. I want to be there. But right now, the big predominant one is what? Uranium, plutonium, nuclear production. But yeah. So, yeah, nuclear energy, excellent chef, is definitely cleaner, especially when you compare it to, like, coal.
Capacity for these electrolyzers is 0.2 gigawatts. 213 gigawatts have been announced to be built according to the European Maritime Safety Agency. But the capacity required to meet demand for ammonia will
RIP not being able to take calls and watch TikTok streams at the same time. Hey, thank you for the congratulations there, Tony Loves Tech. Appreciate it.
Ammonia requires hundreds of billions in investments. This is a very capital-intensive process. And for project developers to cross that bridge and to make that investment, they need to either sell the fuel in advance, sign some sort of long-term contracts, or they need to be market conditions that gives them the confidence that even without the offtake agreements, there will be the market for them to be.
Yeah, it's all about economics at the end of the day.
But
so on an off chance, I just looked up because we compared coal to nuclear. If we look at natural gas, which is the other competitor out of these, in terms of solid waste, natural gas is basically negligible, so it has the advantage there versus nuclear and coal. But in terms of CO2 emissions, where nuclear has basically about none, and coal has about 6 million tons, natural gas produces about 2.8 million tons. So overall, nuclear is still cleaner. The issue is regulations and constraints around building them and everything. But I'm a fan of nuclear energy.
shipping fuel. Like with every new tech, it looks great on paper. No or a very small amount of emissions.
But
and it's scalable. Everything is perfect. But then companies won't release their data. Currently, they're testing it on 1 cylinder. They need to do 4. Then they need to build an actual commercial-sized engine and test that for a longer amount of time to get more data. So this technology needs to complete a long list before it can bring down shipping emissions by 90%. If you did like this video, please comment on it, like it, share it, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. We post new videos on the environment every Friday.
okay, that was a good video. Now let me see. Okay, so that was a couple of the videos that we had tonight. We went through a lot. Of course, I went on a rant about Linus's private jet usage and deep into that. But what I found so funny is people who are anti-nuclear only to have their city powered by it. Oh, yeah. The thing is, I understand on the surface level where a lot of environmentalists are when they have their anti-nuclear concerns, but they're so ill-informed about the whole picture here. Because it's like, if you don't allow a nuclear facility you're going to most likely end up with coal or natural gas. And they can make the argument of, no, we want wind farms, we want solar, but here's the problem. Solar requires a lot of land, okay? No ifs, ands, or buts about that. That's just the reality of it. You have to be in a good part of the world that you get constant sunlight and all of that, and, you know, the sun's not always shining, and, you know, all those things in there. And I'm not poo-pooing solar by any means necessary, but then you have wind. Well, wind can't be everywhere. You have to have it high enough. You have to have plenty of land. You have to also be in an area that has plenty of wind. Geothermal, you're going to have to drill. Drill, baby, drill. You're going to still... That can kind of mess up some of your, you know, ecological concerns around there. Hydro. Hydro can mess up the ecology of streams and rivers and everything there. I know there's offshoots that you can do to have the fish and everything, but the point still stands. It can mess with the environment locally. That at the end of the day, nuclear energy, out of all the options we have there, is still the cleanest alternative to operate for a long time. And as we move more into thorium, we could have energy for hundreds, if not thousands of years. 55% of the power generated in my province is uranium. Hydro is around 24%. Oh, that's really interesting. Do you have a plugin that tracks your position when the scene changes for TikTok? Earlier I could see your mic on TikTok, but now I cannot. I guess you also just have multiple scenes. It's all the same camera. The reason why... So when I have the camera here, you're on TikTok, and it's a 9:16 ratio. So to give you an idea, this is all you see on TikTok over here, okay? If you are on Twitch, Kick, and YouTube, you have, let me get this much. Do you see how much you're missing? Like, TikTok can't even see my arms right here. They can't see the Wu-Tang flag that's over here. And then when I do the scene for the vertical stuff, I'm fitting that 16:9 in that small portion. But when I'm fitting it onto TikTok, I'm doing 9:16. And if you look at the bottom, there's this black bar at the bottom. Because if I expand it even more proportionally, I cut off too much of myself, and I'll go off screen pretty often. That camera can zoom too. Yes, indeed it can. You can zoom in on my man titties. One of these days I'll do the Terry Crews kind of dance. Me thinking the DEF CON flag was Wu-Tang earlier. No, the Wu-Tang is next here. Wu-Tang's over here. DEF CON is here and here. Is it worth going to DEF CON? I think it is. Have a good night, excellent chef. I think it is. I'm going to be going to DEF CON again this year. I've already got my hotel booked for DEF CON. I may have my badge already taken care of thanks to a friend. I'll know for sure in May. I got to book my flight. Gets might be out there. And as I tell everyone, like, look, if you run into me at DEF CON, unless I'm on a call, unless I'm, you know, in the middle of paying for something, because I want privacy when I'm doing a transaction, or, you know, stuff like that, feel free to come up and say hi. I'm a pretty personable person. My only rule is, if you want a picture with me, because I know people want that, I've had that quite a bit, ask me, and let's make sure we don't get anyone else in the background, because at DEF CON we do respect people's privacy and their right to consent to be in photos. That's why you actually don't see me, like, walk around and, like, record at DEF CON, and anywhere I do record, I've gotten prior permission. Now, this year, I'm maybe going to record some stuff for B-roll, but I'm going to Gaussian blur a lot of that stuff out. I'll make sure everything's on the up and up. I got a few friends who are goons out there. That's their volunteers. So I make sure everything's kosher. Because I know a lot of people have questions about that, and this year I'm gonna try to record some more content to make some vlogs out of my DEF CON and B-Sides time. However, I don't know if I'll be able to make them when I'm at DEF CON. Every time I try to, like, say, yeah, I'm gonna make a video while I'm there, I don't. So I'm gonna try to at least record the content, with the idea being that I can stitch it together when I'm back and, you know, try to, you know, take the camera and record myself and do the things. An AI background replacement would be better, wouldn't it? Maybe. Ain't blur semi-reversible? Kinda, sort of. I got a few friends that know that stuff a little bit more than me, and I do some stuff to blur it out. We'll figure it out. Did Twitch crash for anyone else? Twitch should still be up. I'm not showing any dropped frames. I'm still showing like a few viewers there. Okay. But yeah, so I'm working on a few things. So we'll have some DEF CON content and stuff like that later on. This is why I watch on TikTok. TikTok actually crashes a lot more, I've noticed. But I'm also on YouTube and Kick. So pick your poison. Though the stream is optimized for Twitch. And I am working on some more videos. I do have a couple more videos. I have a video that I recorded on CI/CD. So there'll be one on continuous integration and continuous development coming out soon. I just released a video on Kali Linux is not a daily driver. I have a video that I'm going to be recording on, actually I did record, I got to edit it, on Network Plus. I'm going to have another video talking about ITIL v4 and Security Plus. Because I went through all of those and give you my fair shakes about it. I'm going to tell you, I have gotten a little bit ranty in the Network Plus one. Because they call it vendor agnostic, but it's not really. So there's quite a few videos that'll be coming out, and I'm working on streaming a little bit more regularly, as you see. I may get on stream again tomorrow, we'll see, but the next scheduled stream, of course, is Wednesday, and we are moving back to doing gaming on Linux nights, Sunday nights, like we started this past weekend. Occasionally, I may come back on Saturday nights and do streams where I'll do gaming on Linux. But yeah, so does Twitch have encoding issues on macOS or Vari? Oh, you guys are talking about macOS and stuff like that. But yeah, I had a few issues with macOS and stuff like that. Could be an H.265 quirk at this way. I think I'm encoding at H.264, not H.265. I could be a bit wrong. Apple effed up their encoding engine recently. Yeah, Apple's kind of gone screwy with a few things. I'm not that happy with the Mac that I have at work, but hey, it's the work computer they gave to me. I'm not going to complain. Time for... okay, but anyway, it's getting a little bit late here. I have work tomorrow and I got to be in the office, so I will see you all maybe tomorrow. If not tomorrow, definitely Wednesday. So thank you all for joining me. If you haven't already, make sure to follow me on all of my socials. The links are in the bio if you don't see them in chat. And make a point to join the Discord and the Matrix server. I'm on TikTok, I'm on Twitch, Kick, YouTube, Blue Sky, Mastodon, Discord, Matrix, and Instagram now. Apparently that's a thing y'all still want. I don't know. Still can't convince me to get back on Twitter. But my Twitter does still exist. It's just privated. But maybe one day. I don't know. Look, I thought I'd never get back on Instagram. But anyway, thank you all for joining me. If, like I said, follow me on all the channels and all that. And if you are on Twitch, stick around for the raid. I love you all. Stay safe. And happy hacking. If I don't see you tomorrow, I'll see you all Wednesday. And I'll see you in the Discord and Matrix. Bye-bye. See you later. Have a good night, everyone.